ставши на коліно, своє полкове знамено, дивлюсь на нього я востаннє, у нез'ясованій журбі, всю кров мою, всі скитання, воно вібрало у собі, всю кров мою, всі скитання, воно вібрало у собі. Відвагу нашу нашій волі, загиблих друзів імена, читаю на шовковій волі я полкового знамена, дивлюсь на нього я востаннє, у нез'ясованій журбі, всю кров мою, всі скитання, воно вібрало у собі, всю кров
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великой страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Есть.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
О, бля! Игорь!
Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 416 of the news, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine here on day 416, and we're also going to be adding in a little bit of extra news tonight, as many of y'all may have heard about the ongoing coup d'etat that is occurring within the country of Sudan at this moment. We do have a decent amount of news gathered up on that tonight, and it does appear to be probably one of the largest conflicts to be breaking out in Central Africa since the end of the Sudanese Civil War just a few years earlier. And so, before we get into any of that, of course, we're going to start covering the news in Ukraine. And I'm actually going to be laying out the schedule for tonight's news as well. We're going to be starting in Italy. Believe it or not, we'll be covering the Italian news, which also pertains to the Ukraine war, as it is Italian support heading to Ukraine. We'll then be moving on into Ukraine itself and covering the location unknowns. After we cover those location unknowns, we'll be moving down into the area of Sudan for a moment to cover the ongoing coup in between the Sudanese military and also the RSF. After we cover that news, we'll be going back into Ukraine and, of course, going through our poll segment. After we go through that poll segment, we'll then be moving into the Frontline news and covering all the Frontline news in one go, all the way from the northeastern area down to the Zaporizhia front line, and then going to the speech from President Zelensky. After we do all of that, we'll then be rounding out the news segment of the stream and going into the question segment, where we'll be addressing all of the remaining super chats we have not gotten to tonight and all of the live chats we can. And so, without further ado, we are now going to be moving right into Italy and getting to the news there, starting off in the town of Udine. I do not know if it is pronounced that way, correct me if I am wrong, but we did see at the train station within that city today, Italian M109s loaded onto the back of rail cars and on their way towards Ukraine. We can see them right here. We see them passing on through quite a large amount of M109s, and of course helping to bolster and strengthen the Ukrainians' artillery forces once they finally arrive in Ukraine. And you see here, I don't know the exact number, unfortunately, of M109s that was on this train, and we can see that the guy's got a cute little dog. Oh, I didn't see the cute dog the first time I watched this. Well, you now see that the train is starting to pick up a little bit of speed. We see people filming the rail cars as they go by, and now the video goes into a loop. But once again, it is great to see that the mighty M109 Paladin, which has become incredibly famous and very popular as an American SPG here in the West, will be delivered once again in large numbers to Ukraine and hopefully help their artillery to keep the war going. Of course, standardizing...
That's kind of wild, just seeing like tanks come by while you're like standing on the train platform.
Well, you know what was wild, Matthew, is the other day I was actually driving down the highway and I actually saw two 18-wheelers carrying strikers.
Really?
Yeah, I did. I forgot to mention it to you, but I did see that, and I was like, wow, that's kind of wild. And weirdly enough, they aren't that big when you see them in person. They're maybe the size of like a Sprinter van, like, you know, and how big they are. But yeah, I mean, like, that was pretty neat, and it is pretty weird, though, you know, because you never see military activity, you know, on a train station like this. To just see a train pass through with a whole bunch of SPGs on it, it's like, huh, there's a war going on somewhere, apparently, because these are going to it. But still, that's the end of the clip, and great to know that apparently 20-plus self-propelled guns, so there's at least more than 20 of them on this train, but once again, we don't have the exact count. Still great to know that the Italians are continuing their support to Ukraine and making sure that their artillery will eventually be completely westernized, which is a very important part in the Ukrainians', I guess you could say, modernization process. If they did want to become a NATO member, they would eventually have to start implementing weapons and equipment that is of NATO standard. And so getting these M109 Paladins largely ensures that when they win the war and they finally do join NATO, if they keep these, they will already be well on their path to having a standardized NATO military. Moving on into Ukraine itself and on into our location unknowns, we also saw some Ukrainian units on the move today, of massive soldiers. I can only assume that this must be at a training field, because the number of them and their formation is so packed that it couldn't be anything else. But we can see Ukrainians in the thousands moving through this field. Most likely an entire brigade in training, although I'm not exactly certain. That's the end of the video. Not a lot to show there, but still a massive number of Ukrainian soldiers. The amount of times we see this occurring in the war is somewhat rare, believe it or not. But still, it is great to see. We're now going to be moving on from this little bit of news and on into the next bit of location unknown news, where we saw some Ukrainians taking a ride. And here's the clip. Also, of course, I have to mute it because there's some TikTok music there. We can see them kicking out the windshield out of the car. And we can see the windshield wiper is still running. We can now see them getting on the road with no windshield. The windshield's just kind of... Oh my God. I thought we were about to watch a decapitation. Oh my God. The windshield caught air and then just took off. It took off better than the aircraft in the Russian airfields in Crimea. I'd say that. But that was quite scary for a minute. We can see them passing by a sign that says Avdiivka, so we do know the location of the video. We still threw it in the location unknowns, however. We can see them driving through the destroyed city. We now see them getting out near some abandoned railway tracks near the city of Avdiivka and moving on over into a corner side of the street, picking up the empty casing of a shell.
Man, it's like the Jeep Lada or something. There's no doors on it or anything.
Yeah,
just top out.
I was thinking that too. This is like Lada Light. So we can now see them putting the shell in the back of Lada Light and now getting back into the cab. Very interesting video to see, just showing a little bit of Ukrainian soldiers' daily life near the front line in Avdiivka, but once again, we put it in the location unknowns. With that, we're going to be moving on from that little clip, a very interesting one, and on into our next location unknown clip, where we saw a BMP-3 get destroyed by Ukrainian drone bombing tonight. Of course, we can hear the trap remix, and we can see the bomblet on its way, slamming into the BMP-3's side right there. And we can't really tell if that bomblet caused significant damage. We can see them dropping a second one. This one appears to be more so centered onto the turret. This one hits. Can't really tell what kind of damage that one caused as well, however. We now see a third bomblet on its way down. Third time is always the charm. And the third one hits right near the infantry compartment, near the rear of the BMP. They're now dropping a fourth one. The third one was not the charm. The fourth one will be the charm, however. And we can see this one exploding more so towards the front. We now see them dropping a fifth bomblet. And we can now see them dropping a sixth bomblet? A sixth one on this BMP. We now see them dropping that one to the rear and into the infantry compartment again. And it appears that this time the hatches on the BMP-3 are open, and we can see what appears to be some kind of heat coming from inside the BMP, which may show that it has caught on fire. It's just that we haven't seen the thing completely burn out. So we can't really confirm if this BMP-3 was completely destroyed. It may have been partially destroyed, but still, they did use a decent amount of bomblets to make sure to get rid of this BMP-3. We're now going to be moving on from that little bit of location unknown news and on into our fourth clip, where we saw some Ukrainian Mi-24s preparing for flight. And what's really interesting about this video is that they're actually preparing on a road. And we have not really seen a lot of video or picture evidence throughout the entirety of the war until about the past 2 weeks of the Ukrainians using roads for their air force and helicopter forces, but we are starting to see that now, like in this video. You see them filming on their phone. We can see the helicopter still standing by up there, and we see the video loop. We never saw the Mi-24 take off, but it's incredibly interesting to see that the Ukrainians are starting to set up these, I guess you could say, roadside service stations for their Air Force to land on and also for the helicopters to be serviced and operate from. Very interesting to see. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that clip and on out of that and on into our last bit of location unknown news, where we saw the Russian casualty report for today. And the Russian casualties do appear to be somewhat okay. We did see 3 Bobcat skid steers destroyed, and of course, the memes
3 more from Matt. Oh, there's a Bobcat in somebody's house. What the hell?
That's only a Bobcat bed.
Oh, it's a bed?
It's a bed.
That is pretty realistic. It's even got lights on the top of it.
The photorealistic Bobcat bed.
That's something.
And it looks like it looks like we. Oh, wait a minute. There's another one from Han Solo. There were Bobcats here, and I thank everyone for always putting those in. And speaking of putting those in, it appears that the Ukrainians have been putting in those hours today as they were able to take out 460 Russian troops. This is actually on par with the war's average, not incredibly high and not incredibly low. It is good to know that around a half or more of a battalion tactical group's worth of force was wiped out across the front lines today. We also saw that 4 armored personnel carriers had also been destroyed over the past 24 hours as well, most likely attached to the infantry that have also been destroyed today. We saw that 6 supply vehicles were also destroyed, once again showing that there has been an impact to the Russian supply lines once more, with 5,646 supply trucks destroyed. We also saw that 3 tanks were destroyed, around a total of an estimated rough number of $10 million in tank losses over the past 24 hours. Only 1 artillery piece was destroyed, however, which is incredibly low. We usually see somewhere around 4 to 8 of them being destroyed per day over the past few months. Only 1 being destroyed is actually quite a low number. We saw no drones destroyed, no MLRSs destroyed, no aircraft, helicopters, cruise missiles, anti-aircraft war systems, or boats were destroyed over the past 24 hours as well. And so while the numbers are okay, they are not the highest that we've really seen. In fact, when averaging out everything together on the same day, the casualty report is getting a little low, and it does appear that the Ukrainians may not be engaging the Russians as heavily, or the Russians may not be engaging the Ukrainians as heavily. Of course, with what's going on in the Battle of Bakhmut, it is very interesting to see that the Russian casualties are starting to significantly decrease compared to what they were several months ago. We're now going to be moving on from the casualty report and out of our location unknown news and on into the area of Sudan I guess you could say Central Africa. I was actually about to say North Africa, but this is really North Africa. This is more so Central Africa. And we've been hearing some interesting developments here today, and considering that and many of y'all enjoyed our news segments on Taiwan and East Asia, we thought that many of y'all would probably also enjoy to hear other news from around the world that may not be reported on heavily in mainstream news. And one of those things today is the coup inside of the country of Sudan. Sudan, or Sudan, whichever way you want to call it. I think, Matthew, how in the world did we say it before the stream? Because it's either Sudan or Sudan. We got to pick one.
I said Sudan, but I think it's Sudan.
I think it is Sudan. We'll go with Sudan. If it's Sudan, let us know. But anyways, in the country of Sudan today, there was a coup that broke out within the capital city of Khartoum, and it appears to have actually spread to the nearby villages as well. To explain a little bit of what's going on in Sudan, Sudan has been going through, I guess you could say, an economic backslide for several years at this point, which has been causing a large amount of diplomatic unrest and upheaval within the country itself. This led in 2019 for the Sudanese military to conduct a coup d'etat on the civilian government, overthrowing it and then installing themselves as the leaders of the country. Over the past few years, the Sudanese military has been trying to implement some kind of a civilian-led transitionary government that will be once again leading the country back into a largely civil governance. And recently, this civilian transitional government just passed a bill saying that they would allow for elections to take place. This brings in another faction to the entire situation, which is known as the RSF, the Reactionary Support Forces. The Reactionary Support Forces are a paramilitary organization that are actually operated by the internal services of Sudan, but also fall under the direct control of the Sudanese military during times of war. This group is much less controlled than the Sudanese military, and appears to have grown its own power structure to the point that the general of the RSF is now stating that he will overthrow the sitting government and the transitionary government with the backing of the Sudanese military and install a government of his own. And this is where the coup began today. As the morning rose, we did see, and let me make sure I go through here and find the right ones, because I need to find the ones about the air. Wait a minute. Okay, so real quick, let me say this, because I was trying to make sure that we only got a certain number of clips today for this, so that way it wasn't an incredibly long segment, because the amount of news that's been coming out on the Sudanese coup has been incredibly large, and we didn't want it to inflict with the Ukrainian news too much. But at the Khartoum International Airport, RSF forces were spotted engaging the Sudanese military in a firefight near the perimeter, and then later on in the day, it appears that they actually were able to capture the airport in its entirety. During this time, the Sudanese military began to directly combat the RSF head-on inside the city, and massive firefights began to break out. Here's a small video snippet of one of those firefights. into the street and firing off a PKM machine gun. You see this guy, he's firing towards the moon. He's trying to go and get the Apollo 11 project down. You now see the machine gunner still laying down fire. And this was
who are these, the good guys or the bad guys?
Now, let me make sure, because, let's see, between RSF and military, Wild Street Fight, it doesn't really say who in the world these guys are. And I don't, let's pull this up real quick. Let's clarify this. The RSF of Sudan, and let's go find the Rapid Support Forces, and let me go down here, and let me see if I can find any pictures of their uniforms. We can't. So, let's see. Maybe if I go to Google Images, maybe it'll show us there. The RSF.
Because whoever these guys are, they're worsely trained than the Russians, I think, because they had no control whatsoever.
So this may be the RSF? It's really hard to tell, because I believe let me pull up the Sudanese military, or the Sudanese army specifically, and let's see their uniform. So the Sudanese army's uniform seems to be of darker colors, more like darker greens and darker browns, and it appears that the RSF is using some kind of a desert camouflage, at least in this picture right here, and the other pictures that we're seeing like this one. So this appears to be the camouflage of the RSF, this appears to be the camouflage of the Sudanese army. But in this video, if you notice, it seems as though there's a mix of guys here. There's one guy, well, there's these guys here that look like the Sudanese military, and then behind them there's a guy who's dressed up in a lighter color uniform that looks like it's a part of the RSF. So right now I think there's just mass confusion going on in Khartoum because everyone's wearing everyone else's uniforms. There's no clear identifier, so we don't really know who's fighting who right now inside of Khartoum, and we don't really know who these guys even are, but they are firing at the opposite side, whoever the opposite side is, further down range. We're going to be moving on.
The guy firing the machine gun was like skinny as a twig and was getting knocked around by the recoil. I mean, worst I've ever seen.
Yeah, it looked like it was pretty rough for him. And later on in the day, we actually saw that the Sudanese Air Force was actually mobilized, and we saw Sudanese MiG-29 ESs, or SEs actually, flying over the city. You see one right there. And you see smoke billowing up from all the firefights across the entirety of the city. And as far as we understand it right now, the entire city, every single block of it, is embroiled in some kind of infighting, and there is no real front lines. It's more so government forces going up against the paramilitary groups wherever they engage each other. And so there is no verifiable front lines at the moment. We also saw later on that exact same MiG-29 that had taken to the skies actually hitting a building in Sudan. This is video. And that's the end of the clip. We, of course, are not able to confirm whether that building was completely empty or not. Chances are, considering that the coup kicked off immediately, there has been no evacuations from the city whatsoever, and so that bomb most likely fell directly onto a building filled with civilians. We're now going to be moving on to the next clip that we also got from Khartoum, showing the coup continuing in another clip. This is actually from the cockpit of a Saudi Airlines A330, showing RSF forces taking over the airfield outside. And you see them right there.
Where's the others? We should have.
You see them firing across the runway as the pilots just sit inside the cockpit getting a first-person view of a firefight going on for control of the airfield.
Airport security know it or not?
We hear the pilots trying to confirm whether these guys are a part of airport security or not, and these are not part of airport security. These are the RSF.
Yeah, we have two shooters. People shooting on the other side.
On the other side. What's going on?
With that, that's the end of the clip. And we're now going to be moving on into the next one, where we also saw an aircraft firing. It was once again the same MiG-29 later on in the day, once again. And this may have actually been a video clip from another angle of it firing a missile into the building we saw just a minute ago. You see the missile firing and then exploding further down the street. There is no audio on this building, or this video more so, but we can see the MiG-29 pulling away after it fired off the missile. With that, we're now going to be moving into our next clip, and I know there's not really a lot of explanations to these clips, and it's because right now there's absolute chaos going on within the capital of Khartoum. We don't really know who controls who. All we know is that the RSF does control the airfield, and there are rumors that they control other areas of the city, like the northern part of Khartoum, and also the presidential palace, but we're not exactly sure. We did see, however, that there was a largely armored wall in front of the presidential palace using T-55s and T-54s that we can see here in these video clips. Well, more so pictures. Very interesting to see, because I know the Russians are salivating at thinking they may be able to get a couple of these for the war in Ukraine, but it appears that the Sudanese are currently occupying them and using them right now. But right now, there's not really a lot that we can get out of this rather than the video and picture evidence itself. The capital is in complete chaos. We do know that 50 people have died, including 3 UN employees, somewhere around the vicinity of the airfield. But we do not know much more beyond that. We do not know who's even coming out on top, because right now the sun is beginning to rise once again over the city of Khartoum, and over the night it appears that all news is completely dropped off on what's going on there. So we do not know if the RSF forces have been able to take entire control of the capital, or if they are in the process of still conducting the battle, and if the Sudanese military has been able to hold on to the city or even crush the RSF. We're still not entirely sure. But with that, we're now going to be moving out of Sudan and back into Ukraine, where we're going to be covering the rest of the frontline news from the northeast all the way down to the south. But before we do, Matthew's been running some really good polls. And as you all know, polls are exquisite. The best there ever is. And so we have to cover the polls. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and to start off, our very first poll says Poland bans the import of Ukrainian grain and agricultural goods after intense protests. And what are your thoughts? 34% said that's understandable by Poland, 16% said unsure, 19% said I'm mixed on it, and 31% said not good, Ukraine needs to export. And I personally am with the 34%. I think that's understandable. Apparently, the grain and all the other products coming from Ukraine were being imported into Poland at a rate much, much, much less than the grain that was being produced inside of Poland. And it was undercutting the Polish farmers, and they were suffering very badly financially, and that caused them to start protesting en masse. Poland, as we know, is one of Ukraine's largest allies and largest financiers of their efforts against Russia. Important that their civilians and citizens aren't, basically screwed over by being undercut in prices. But Enforcer, what say you?
I thought you cut out there for a second. I think you may have been. But in my opinion, I do think it is important for the Polish to ensure that their farmers do not get undercut in the process of trying to support Ukraine, because if they are, that means that the Polish economy could also start to become unstable or even start going through a recession. And then if all of the countries supporting Ukraine start going through recessions, the chances of the Ukrainians getting long-term support will most likely start to diminish. So I think it is very important for the Polish to make sure to protect them, their own domestic economy, so that way they can continue to support Ukraine, and they will be in a position to keep doing that. So with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next poll we have says Russia has denied the U.S. consular access to the jailed Wall Street Journal journalist. And what are your thoughts? 41% said both option 1 and 3. Option 1 said Russia is getting even with the USA, which 34% went with that. And the third option said Russia is probably abusing him. 21% went with that, and 5% said unsure. And on this one, I would probably be with the 41% as well. Obviously, Russia wants to get even with the USA for multiple things. Also, probably including not allowing Lavrov into New York to attend that Security Council meeting. And, honestly, I couldn't imagine Russia properly treating a United States detainee or a arrested individual. I would probably have to assume that they're probably not treating him perfectly good, to state the least. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that it isn't that shocking to hear, much like you said. I think that may be tit for tat for what we did to Lavrov, denying him membership to the United Nations. So I would say it's more so trying to get back for what we did to Lavrov just yesterday, and that may be the reason why. But once again, much like Matthew said, Russian prisons and treatment in prisons, especially for foreigners, has never been noted to be exceptional or that good at all. So that may also be another reason why they're not allowing them to get to the guy, because he may have already been bruised and battered by the Russian police that are currently holding him right now. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next poll.
All right, and our third poll says Zelensky says he wants security guarantees for Ukraine, and would it be equivalent to NATO membership? 41% said yes, it would be equivalent. 17% said unsure. 32% said it would be similar to it, and 10% said it's the best they'll ever get. Now, if Ukraine comes out on the good side of this war, which I believe they probably will, I think they'll one day be in NATO, and I'll be very happy to see that. But for now, to ask for security guarantees, I would say that if we were to grant those, it would probably be pretty similar to being in NATO. But of course, it would be on a country by country basis and not an entire alliance basis. So I'm with the 32%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, let's see, is that the poll that's currently up right now? Just want to make sure.
Yes.
Okay, let's see. Let me make sure to read it, because it's always hard to hear it and then try and remember what I'm saying and then listen to what you're saying too. Is always hard for me. But let's see. He wants for Ukraine, would it be equivalent? Yeah, I think it would largely be equivalent in a way. But I really feel that NATO membership should be the goal. Because if we give security guarantees, he may as well be in NATO. Well, Ukraine may as well be in NATO. So why give them the guarantees and then have them not in NATO, even for any amount of time? Just get them through the war right now, and then get them into NATO, instead of trying to do a kind of like step-up routine where the war ends, then we get a security guarantee for them, and then because of that, we lull around on getting them into NATO. Because, of course, we're not going to give any security guarantees right now with the current ongoing war, because we give those security guarantees, then it's immediately invoked because the Russians are threatening their security, and then we get involved, and that's what we've been avoiding for 416 days. So I would have to say that would certainly have to happen once the war is over, instead of waiting for it to happen now. But still, it is largely equivalent, and that's why I don't really see the sense in it. I think they should just be brought into NATO as soon as possible, instead of bringing up a security guarantee. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also I see, and one interesting thing I've seen tonight is that I don't know if a lot of people like the Sudanese news or not. We'd actually had a lot of people reach out to us on Twitter and ask us if we could cover the Sudanese news, and so we did. Now I'm seeing a lot of people who were complaining that they didn't want to hear Sudanese news. So I guess, could we run a poll on that, Matthew?
Yes, I was just typing one up as you were speaking.
Yeah, because we want to cover news that y'all are interested in. And it seems as though many of y'all are militant into saying that Sudan does not matter, and it's not even worth covering. So I guess we'll throw up a poll and we'll see what y'all think. But with that, while Matthew is putting up that poll, I guess we're just going to sit here and wait the thing out.
All right, ants up. There you go.
Well, I thought, we thought, because everyone was very happy to hear world news, like with Taiwan and such things, and we were talking last night about how, just news around the world's fairly interesting. People don't hear a lot about what's going on, that folks would also enjoy hearing about the Sudanese coup and what's going on down there, since it is a large happening in the world. Large
I'll be honest. The Sudanese segment, after seeing the videos, you really can't tell what side anyone's on, and it just seems like a bunch of chaos, like pandemonium. The difference in Europe and Ukraine in this war is you can generally tell which side people are on, and there's organized, fighting going on. So you can get behind Ukraine because they're in the right. But you can't even tell who's fighting in Sudan.
Yeah,
or Sudan.
And that's true. That's why it was very hard for me to even really tell the news about it, because it's like, who are these guys? Like, who's who and what they're doing? Because all of them are wearing mismatched uniforms, so there's no clear uniformity of who is who and what's going on down there. And nobody really has an idea of what's going on there right now. That's why I was like, we think these are these guys, because nobody really knew. It seems as though right now 60% of y'all are going with the option of y'all want to hear more, and only 20% of y'all are going with no. but some of y'all said yes, but y'all don't want to hear more of it. I'm honestly probably going to lean more so on the side of this may be a one-time thing tonight, covering the Sudanese news, in my opinion, because it's really hard for me to cover because it's so confusing. It's really hard for me to even explain what's going on down there because at one point the military crushed the democratic protesters who wanted a democracy, and then they're supporting the civilian government right now, and it's very weird. That's all I'll say. So with that, I hope we addressed that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right. Now, that being said, we're moving on to our super chat questions. And up first, we have a $20 donation from none other than Jose Diaz. He says, thanks for all your support to our Ukrainian brothers and sisters, to the Enforcer Matt, and the LSA. I won't be in the chat for the next 3 weeks. I will be in Florida visiting 4 of my 5 daughters. I will be back, and God bless.
And thank you so much for the support, Jose Diaz. I hope you have a fun time, and we will miss you because we always know that the commandant of the Puerto Rican division of the LSA is always here. So we will miss you. We hope you have a fun time, though. And I thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping us to keep it running. Because, of course, without support from folks like you, it wouldn't be possible for us to keep the gears running behind the scenes on this channel and to make sure that we can continue to report on all of the news from Ukraine and some of the news from around the world. Most likely not Sudan again, although a decent amount of y'all did enjoy that segment. Probably not there again because it's just too confusing for me to even cover. But still, thank you so much once again for the support, Jose. I hope that does address the comment tonight. The comment fairly well. And sorry for the stuttering, because tonight I am truly just exhausted. I think Matthew and me are truly just exhausted, and we're trying to roll through the best we can. But I'm hardly.
It's that heat and that pollen outside. I'm telling you, it's wearing me out. Like, you can take a small walk outside, and that heat in the South and Alabama will absolutely devastate you. You'll come back inside like cooked.
Yeah, I mean that's true, but I'm telling you, I'm gonna be honest tonight. I'm hardly here right now, and so that's why I'm kind of stumbling over my words because I'm like, what in the world am I doing? I drank as much coffee as I could too, so that's already been taken care of. But still, thank you so much once again for support, Jose, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat question goes to CK Bold, who puts in a $10 super chat. And thank you very much for that support, CK, like always. And CK says, take a live chat question.
And we will take a live chat question. And thank you so much once again for the support, CK Bold. And of course, helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, what do we got for a live chat, Matthew?
And the live chat goes to, let's see here, Pizza Man, who says, why doesn't the U.S. buy the Ukrainian grain since Poland banned it?
The U.S. could possibly buy Ukrainian grain. The problem is that the United States rarely ever buys food from other countries. We are a very militant country about how our food, really a lot of countries are militant about how food is made and what they consider safe or consumable. For example, to tell a little bit of a story, back when Britain was going through a little thing, of course we can't really talk about it because it's a very political subject, but back when they were going through a thing just a few years ago, they were trying to find a friend in the United States economically, and specifically in terms of food support and food trade for the large part, because the British were getting out of the European Union, and so they wouldn't be subject to the low tariffs there, so they had to find somewhere else to go. The problem was that the massive protests were brought up about how the United States cleans our chicken during our, I guess you could say, mass industrial process. Well, you see, we actually clean our chickens in a chlorinated solution, and that is something that is heavily frowned upon in a lot of European countries, and so that caused a massive stir. In the United States, that's considered completely acceptable. And we don't really see much of a problem with it. And with grain, there really isn't a lot that you could change about grain. Grain is grain at the end of the day. The thing is, however, is that usually, this is the second problem, the United States produces such an overabundance of food that usually the federal government has to pay farmers either not to plant or to make sure to destroy their crops at the end of the year, so that way there isn't so much food hitting the open market for sale that all of it becomes worthless and farmers lose their shirts in literally 1 year. So it would be very hard for the United States to buy the grain because there's really nothing that we could do with the grain rather than buying it and most likely destroying it immediately, so that way it doesn't interfere with the U.S. economy. So it is a little bit of a difficult situation to work with. Ukraine could try and sell the grain to countries like Turkey. Turkey would probably be a fairly good recipient of the grain, but it can't really go all into one place. The grain has to be spread out fairly evenly because the Ukrainian grain used to mostly be sold to the Russians and also to other countries in the Middle East and East Africa. It appears that the major buyers, most likely the Russians, no longer are buying. I have no idea why, but it's very hard to find a place for all that grain to go because Western supply lines and Western price, I guess you could say, gauges are kind of already fixed and set on the current amount of supply, making sure that the farmers over here are getting the right price for their grain. So that is a fairly good question. Actually, someone actually came up with a good point. Tim said, why not donate it? LOL. And of course, always throw in the LOL. That is actually a pretty good idea because if the Ukrainians are selling it at an extremely low price that's undercutting pretty much anyone, that would probably be a fairly easy thing to do is just buy it and then give food support. But where do we give the food support? Because from what I understand it right now, there are a decent amount of African countries that are, of course, going through famine, but is it even possible to get the food there? I'm not really sure, but that is a fairly good idea of what we could do with the grain. But one thing I will say is that it would never be a smart idea for the Polish to allow their farmers and their entire agricultural industry to go under to buy Ukrainian grain. So I understand where they're coming from doing that because that could cause a lot of problems for Poland in the future. But at the same time, it's a really tough question to answer. Where could the grain really go? And so with that, I hope that does answer the question the best I can, Pizza Man. And thank you so much, CK Bold, for also sponsoring that live chat as well. And with that, we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the frontline news in Ukraine.
All right, and this one goes to Cindy Mitchell, who puts in a $10 donation and says, thank you for covering Sudan, and pass it to the chat, Matt.
Well, I thank you for the support and enjoying that we covered Sudan. Tonight's really going to be the only night we cover Sudan because it's a really hard topic for me to cover because even though it seems as though 60% of y'all enjoyed it and that was the largest option by far, there's really no rhyme or reason to what's happening there right now for me to be able to explain what's going on or talk about definitive front lines or anything like that for that matter. It's practically non-existent. So sadly, this is going to be the only night we cover it, but I still do thank you so much once again for the support because that support does help us to cover all of the news we do in Ukraine and East Asia and also Sudan tonight. And without y'all support, it would have never been possible for this channel to get to this point. I'll skip on that. I'm sorry, I don't even know where I was going with that part. But with that, let's get to the live chat.
All right, and the live chat question goes to Buck Naked, and yes, I do know what that says. And Buck says, since we know through the leaked Pentagon papers that our government has supposedly been lying to us, and our troops are in Ukraine, will this change our support for the war?
No, because they weren't lying. We already knew they were there. They said they were sending in advisors and stuff a good while ago. And of course. I guess if you want to say they lied, they sent in special forces, but at the same time, we always send, almost every time we ever send advisors anywhere, they're always special forces. That's usually what the military advisors consist of, because they're usually the best ones for the job. So, in my opinion, they didn't lie about that. One thing they did lie about, though, was the number of Chinese balloons flying over the United States. Now, that is one thing they did openly misrepresent, but they did not misrepresent the fact that there are Americans inside of Ukraine. We even covered that on this channel a long time ago, that there were U.S. advisors helping out the Ukrainian military in Ukraine before those classified documents even came out. And then we saw them, and I said, well, that's nothing new. We covered that a long time ago on this channel. And just I don't know what people were expecting the advisors to be like, Ricky the cook from the 73rd or something, it's of course going to be people from the Green Berets or the SEAL team or MARSOC. It's going to be something like that. They're not going to send over just, the regular army. They're going to send over the special forces because they'll be able to impart the normal training and then even go the extra mile if that kind of training is needed. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also some people are asking, why in the world, I know this is a weird side question, but some people are actually asking, why in the hell is the United States chlorinating the chickens? it's just considered a clean, a safe and clean practice in the United States. It's not really that the chickens are like irradiated or anything, so you have to chlorinate them for them to, be edible. It's just that over here, with how our industrial process of producing food works, chlorinating the chickens is acceptable. And that happens to all of them in the United States, actually. If you ever eat a single piece of chicken that came from a store, it most likely was chlorinated at some point. So with that, I hope that answers that fairly well. Kind of an interesting food fact. There's really, honestly, I would love to do this sometime in the future and make videos entirely about the United States and how food works over here, because there's a lot about the economics of food in the United States that a lot of people don't know or they don't really understand. Like, milk can't be sold from Washington State to Alabama. That's actually illegal. It's like,
That's
what?
nuts.
Yeah, it's nuts, and it has to do with all this crazy stuff about how milk is distributed to make sure that milk companies don't get screwed over. But anyways, with that, I thank you so much once again for support, and I hope we answer that question the best I can. And with that, we're now going to be moving on from the question segment and back into the frontline news. Starting off in the northeast near the area of Svatove, where we have seen some fairly interesting developments, to say the least. We saw that some Russians were destroyed up here in interesting fashion. When you hear the rock music playing, when you see a Russian rolling across a road, we now see Russians moving up the road and something of a partially destroyed village. And we now see an explosive go off. We don't know what kind. I don't know if it was a mortar or what, but that Russian is gone. We now see a large group of them here on a wall, and they will also be gone too. Sadly, we actually didn't get to see that part, but with that, that's the end of the clip. And as you can see right there, of course, in the northern Svatove area, while there hasn't been a lot of frontline changes, there has been still some activity, of course, of the Ukrainians trying to inflict casualties on Russian forces, so that way they are still thrown a little off and always in a constant process of trying to reorganize their units or trying to compensate for their losses. We're now going to be moving on further down the line and into the area of Krasnoyarsk, where we saw the Russians being hit by bomblets.
Oh yeah, that Chad music.
That Chad music. Someone quick, pull out the way. Someone pull out the way. We got ourselves a Chad. They're dropping the bomblet. It's on its way. We see the Russians holding hands, skipping down the street, and the bomblet explodes behind them. Both of them go falling to the ground. The thing, the crock pot or whatever the hell that is, it's just sitting there now. And we now see the Russians doing aerobics. Looks like they were trying to get in some leg stretches, things like that.
Oh, my back.
Oh, bled. This will not be covered by the Russian VA, bled.
You'll never catch me crawling like that, no matter what the circumstances are.
Man. Well, I kind of agree with that, but anyways, with that, that's the end of the clip, and we can see right there the drone bomblet did get the guys. Of course, to make sure to go over the frontline news again, and let me make sure to refresh this, because I checked this literally 20 minutes before the news started tonight, and it looks like Deep State has once again not updated the map today, showing that there was so little frontline change that there was no reason in updating the map, so nothing has happened here in the northeast. We're now going to be moving down into the area of Rubizhny, where we did see that the Ukrainians were able to launch a missile strike onto a Russian base in the area of Rubizhny, and of course, cause a sizable fire. We don't know what kind of damage was caused to this base, but we believe that it may be extensive. We hear the explosions of the missiles in the distance.
Что-то взорвалось. Чувачка взорвалась.
We can see the cameraman still looking into the distance, mostly a Ukrainian citizen watching the smoke billowing out of this camp. And so with that, that's the end of the clip. But still, a very interesting sight to see, and we do not, of course, once again, know how much damage this has really caused. It could have caused a very significant amount of damage to Russian supply lines and, of course, Russian forces in the area. But, of course, we didn't get a close enough look at this base to kind of gauge what kind of damage this has really caused to Russian units in the area. Hopefully, it was serious. We're going to be moving on from that clip and on to our next one further down and just west of Lysychansk, where you saw a Russian explaining what the front line is like. Also, I forgot the translation is up here, so let me read it over here real quick before I show this Russia. He says, lots of people are asking us, how is it there on the front, like in a harem? We know that the Ukrainians will F us soon, but we do not know when. So now, here is him saying it.
Как дела у нас на фронте? Как в гареме. Знаем, что ВСУ нас скоро трахнут, но не знаем, когда.
Why in the world do you look around like that at the end of the video? He's like, where are they? After he sits there and says, we don't know when, he looks around like, when? Dude, this is literally days of our lives right here, man. But anyways, you can see that this Russian is not happy with the frontline situation, and he believes that he is now being pimped out by Ukrainians somewhere on the front line. With that, we're now going to be moving on from that clip and on into the next one, also in the area, where we saw the Ukrainians did take on 3 Russian POWs. It appears that these guys did get the short end of the stick. Anyways, here's a clip. Whoa, hey, easy, Daft Punk, easy, Daft Punk. We'll lay it a little bit later. We see the Russian soldier standing here. None of them have similar uniforms. I swore one of them was wearing a Flecktarn for a minute, like one of those German Flecktarns. But no, this guy is just wearing an oversized coat. This guy is wearing proper size clothes. We can see a Ukrainian soldier filming the Ukrainian soldier, who's filming the Russians. This guy here is questionable. To bring him in for questioning immediately. And this guy here, he's just covering his ears and just chilling out. But 3 more Russians to add to the prisoner exchange fund. And always great to know, because that's another 3 Ukrainians that will hopefully be returning from a Russian prisoner of war camp somewhere in the future. With that, we're now going to be moving on from this video, of course dubbed by the Daft Punk itself, and we're now going to be moving down just a few miles away from the beginning of the Bakhmut lines, where we saw today that the K2 battalion was hitting Russians in foxholes. Oh, gotta mute that because we got some accordion there. But when you see a Russian right there, he's just doing something in his dugout. And it looks like the Ukrainians are about to dig him out. You see them lining up the bombletto. Or the shoe, whatever the hell that was. It is fallen into the dugout. And it explodes. Success. We know one guy.
Success.
I was about to say that, man. We know one guy who would sit there and go, a great success. And we can see right there, it looks like it was, in fact, a successful mission. And that's the end of the clip, but of course the K2 is doing a good job. A very good job, in fact. And I would have to say, it's great to see that they're able to hit the Russians with dead-on precision, much like that. We're now going to be moving down into the Bakhmut front line as well. And we saw on the Bakhmut front line a large amount of happenings today. Unfortunately, the frontline map has not been updated, and that shows that there has been no frontline movement whatsoever. That is good for the Ukrainians in the city, as that means they have been able to hold their positions over the past 24 hours. But once again, it doesn't give us an exact insight as to what is really happening. We do know that there are large firefights happening on every single side of the city right now, and it appears that the Russians may be trying to pull a Hail Mary, as we got video footage literally going all the way from the western ridge into the town and to the southern end that shows that the Russians are trying to nail Ukrainian lines as hard as they can. They may have been trying to build up at least 4 hours of supplies for maybe months on end at this point to try and pull this off, but it appears to be providing, at least as far as the frontline map update goes, no results. And so, here's the clip of a firefight on the western ridgeline. And it's quite a lengthy one.
That was a good throw.
Yeah, that was a nice throw. This guy should get in the NFL. When you see the grenade exploding in the distance, smoke coming back over him.
Чекай. Пішли, братан.
We can now see this Ukrainian soldier looking over and into the trench line that they're about to be moving into.
Братан, прикрий. Крий, блядь. Дай вогню.
We now see a Ukrainian soldier laying down fire as the Ukrainian moves on into a larger opening in the trench, messing with his AK.
Куда?
And also, I'm going to say this real quick because that right there kind of looks like something else for a minute. If you do want to support this channel, I do not know how long that will be possible going beyond this point.
Oh dear.
So I'm just saying,
No.
I'm just saying, if you want to support this channel, now might be the moment because you might not be able to later on in the stream because if we get age restricted, they don't allow that anymore, at least for the night. So just letting y'all know.
I didn't see nothing.
I didn't see nothing either. It was something, I saw nothing. We now see a grenade exploding further down the trench that the Ukrainian soldier threw. And we can see that it appears to be maybe a two-man group. We can also see that this guy over here is using what appears to be some kind of an M4 carbine. We now see this guy also firing his M4 as well, further down the trench line.
Блядь, гониш? Так.
We now see them moving on further down the trench.
Відкрий. Та не так крий, братан.
We now see this Ukrainian soldier getting a grenade ready. We can see this guy's adrenaline, although he's still pushing forward, and you gotta give him a lot of credit for that. He's pushing forward, but his adrenaline is through the roof. You can tell by how much his hands are shaking. This guy is probably not going to remember anything. This is all just going to be a blur to him.
Та не так крий, братан.
You see that right there. You see his hand shaking as he's trying to get the grenade pin pulled. He pulls the pin, flings the grenade down the trench, and in a second we'll hear it explode. You see the grenade explode, smoke flying back over him once more. We now see him firing his M4 again. PC Skyman sat there, he's like, alright, good night. Good night, PC Skyman.
Повтори.
We now see the Ukrainians still getting ready to advance forward, of course using a large amount of grenades as they go.
Ой, я вже все.
I'm told there's a lot more sleeping orcs coming up.
Well,
Готовий.
we're gonna have to get ready.
Що?
You know what's interesting is that this video doesn't have any warnings on it, and we haven't seen anything crazy yet. We just saw something that looked kind of crazy, but it wasn't what we were thinking it was.
Що він сказав?
So we're playing it risky here.
Покрутив. За горбик треба закинути, братан.
We now see the Ukrainian soldier standing by as they lob another grenade down the trench. Trench warfare isn't really won by head-on attacks through the trench with rifles. Throughout most of history, and specifically in the First World War, trench warfare was usually won with close-in melee weapons like shovels and knives, and also a large amount of grenades. That's why if you ever look at the Sosstruppen, which are also known as the stormtroopers of the First World War, and I'll show you all this real quick just to kind of have a break in the tension of the video, German World War I stormtroopers. And I could probably find you all a picture really easily of one of these guys in their combat kit. You can actually see some of the first, I guess you could say body armor as well. I think that was called like lobster back armor or something similar. It was just like literal like steel plates put together. It was incredibly heavy and very unusable. But right here, actually, this is what I was talking about. You can see these stormtroopers from the Imperial German Army in the First World War rigged out with as many grenades as they can carry. This guy right here is carrying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This guy is also carrying a large amount of grenades as well. The entire intent of the stormtroopers was to make their way across no man's land, usually crawling through the craters, you know, and through them to the enemy trench, usually engage the infantry right in front of them with melee weapons like knives and shovels, and once they secured that part of the trench, they would start pulling these grenades off of each other's backs, flinging them further down the trench, blowing away everyone in front of them, and then making their way down. Using rifle and rifle fire for the large part in the trench is one of the more inefficient ways to go about it. At least that's what history has shown. Pistols, grenades, and knives are usually the most efficient ways to clear out trenches. And that's what we're kind of seeing in this video, is that while they are using rifles, they're also using an incredibly high amount of grenades. We now see the smoke billowing back over them again. And we now see the Ukrainians now advancing further down the trench only about waist height at this point. And when you see some clothes on the ground, we can't really see much more than that at the moment, as we continue to look on down the trench. And we're going to end the video right there, because while that is just clothes, remember, say it with me everyone, it is only clothes. We do not want to get into a situation where it will get worse. So with that, that's the end of that clip, but you can see right there some of the intense firefights that are going on the western ridgeline as Ukrainian forces try and reclaim trenches from the Russians and make sure that they don't threaten the Ukrainian rear lines near Chromove. Moving further on down into our next video, we also saw more battles taking place in both the fields and the city of Bakhmut itself, and this was taken by the 3rd Brigade, which is also known as the Azov. You see they've now made it out of the APC and they're in the city itself, once again showing the destruction that the city of Bakhmut has endured over this 6 to 7 month battle.
Да, телек, конечно, ёбнутый нахуй. PS-очку поиграть на таком, да.
We can now see them wandering around inside of this house, and oddly enough, through all of this destruction, there is still a perfectly intact flat-screen TV right there. Everything's covered in dust, the ground is covered in glass and pieces of plaster from the walls, and yet that flat-screen TV looks like it just got there. That is really weird. One of the weirdest things
Go ahead
I've
and
seen.
fire up the Xbox and get Call of Duty playing.
Man, I'm in Call of Duty. That's what the Ukrainian soldiers would say. You can, of course, see the clip of the Ukrainian tank outside getting destroyed by anti-tank fire here in a minute. Ooh. Right there. Ooh. That's the Ukrainian soldiers looking out the windows. An artillery shell lands nearby and explodes. Ukrainian soldiers firing out of the building. You hear the firefight still going on. You can see them looking outside. You can see a group of soldiers moving right there. We're not sure if they're Ukrainian or Russian. I'm assuming they're not Russian, considering that they were not shot and they were in clear line of sight of Ukrainian infantry. And we can see a little bit of a thing right there. They're doing some medical treatment.
сука, яка пиздарезка, я хуею, блядь.
You see the soldiers standing by in a house as they attend to the wounded. Well, that's the end of the clip. But once again, showing the heavy fighting that's been going on inside the city of Bakhmut from the brave guys in the 3rd Brigade, who have been doing an incredible job holding the northern flank, and appears to have also rotated themselves a little bit into the city itself, and are now engaged in the heavy urban fighting there. Moving on to our next clip within the city of Bakhmut, we also saw the fighting in Bakhmut from another angle. We actually saw some Ukrainian soldiers kind of just listening into the firefight outside. You see these Ukrainian soldiers sitting here and just listening to the firefight inside of someone's house. We can see that they had some kind of a... I don't know. What the hell is that machine called right there, Matthew?
An elliptical.
An elliptical. That sounds interesting. We can see an
I think
elliptical.
it's called an elliptical.
Someone's about to tell us we're wrong, I'm sure.
It's a stepper.
We can see a stepper or whatever the hell that is right there. We hear the firefight going on outside. We can see these Ukrainian soldiers standing by for orders or waiting for the fire to subside.
Man, they should hop on that thing and start like rowing it while the fire's going on outside.
Everyone's saying it is an elliptical. We see them still standing by. The firefight's just going on outside. We hear the bullets bouncing off the ground near the building, but not directly at them. And that was actually a really nice little room that they have right here. Like with a little dome ceiling in it and everything.
Got the little wall air conditioner unit.
Man, this seems nice. I wonder if it's a hotel room. Well, no, I doubt it because I don't think hotel rooms have exercise machines in their rooms, but still very interesting. And we can hear the audio cut out right there, showing that that is the end of that clip. But once again, showing a continuation of the firefight that has been going on around the entirety of the city of Bakhmut. We're now going to be moving on down into the southern end, where we also saw more footage from Bakhmut City, just showing the overall situation.
Hunger make you eat your words, that nigga.
All right, that was great.
Oh.
That was great. Well, we always love music like that. It's just wonderful. You know, not only can it get us copyrighted, but it can get us in all kinds of trouble there. That's wonderful. We can now see the Ukrainians moving on through the fields. And I was quick to mute that one, too. And whatever. Anyways, we can now see the firefights going on outside. Some smoke rising in the distance. We can also see something firing out there. It is an APC. And we can see it get hit. We don't know whose APC that was. It may have been a Russian one or a Ukrainian one. Still can't tell. We now see the Ukrainian soldiers moving forward. We can see a burning ZSU-23 on the back of a Ural 4320. We can see them pulling a guy off of the burning vehicle. We now see this guy messing with, I'm trying to see what that is, a mortar shell. We now see the mortar shell firing, and that appears to be the end of the clip. Not an incredibly long one, but once again showing the actions and activity that's going on in that city. And if I find who put that copyrighted song in there with what it said, I'm gonna strangle him. I'm gonna strangle him, man, because that could have gotten us in a lot of trouble. And so with that, we're moving on out of the southern, the central area of Bakhmut and on into the area of Ivanivske, where we saw the evacuations going on in Bakhmut. And this is also a very important video to show, as it does show that the T-0504 highway is still open and operational. And so with that, here's the clip. We see them passing by other vehicles. We see them now unloading waters.
Пока машина целая, чтобы мы успели
We see them
уехать.
getting the citizens out.
Стреляют везде.
Это вы на эвакуацию?
Я на эвакуацию.
Ну вы что, издеваетесь? Я специально за вами приехала, вы боитесь выходить или что? Сколько времени вам надо, я спрашиваю?
10 минут.
Все, мы ждем вас там на торце в подвале. Быстро!
We hear the evacuation team hurrying them on.
Вот такие вот звуки сейчас тут.
And the front line, which at the time of this video being filmed, which was today, it's only 300 meters away. We're about 3 football fields lengths away from the front line. That's where they are right now. That's how close they are. And so it is entirely possible that a stray bullet would still have deadly velocity. In fact, in a normal firefight in a rural area, the distance is somewhere around 300 to 400 meters. And so this is well within firefight distance. That's how close they are.
Ну шо? Все, они едут, поехали. Я к ним 2 раза ездил.
I don't know what was with the bird
Первый раз
tweet,
нашел,
but
второй раз нашел. Они сказали, мы не
That was misplaced
уезжаем.
footage.
Такие вот дела, ребят.
we now see them running on
Вы
along.
жить, я так понял, не хотите, да? Тут сидите.
Тут сидим тут.
А шо?
Надеемся на лучшее.
Вы шо?
We sit here and hope for the best, and then jumps when the shell explodes. It's like, yeah, you kind of need to leave, don't you?
I liked how the guy literally made it pretty clear. You don't want to live, do you?
Look, I offered you. If you want to die, then as you want. That is some hardcore negotiating right there. Want to live? No. You want to die? Yeah. All right. Bye. And then he just leaves. Now see him on his phone in a basement. You hear an artillery shell exploding nearby.
Целые все 300, 200. Все,
You now see them in the car driving out. Artillery shell just exploding 50 yards away, just about. And they are out of there. Very lucky for those guys. And also, very lucky for the evacuees that they were also taking out of the city. Moving on down to our last...
I think some of those people, like the one that was sitting there just saying that they're going to stay behind, they might be looking for the Russians, because that reaction was not normal, being in the middle of a war zone.
No, not really, because even if I was scared of what was out there, I would be much more scared of dying than anything else, to be honest with you. So I'd be like, yeah, I'd leave. I would be like, yeah, sure, let me into the back of the van. We're leaving today. So yeah, they may be waiting for the Russians. You know, as the Ukrainians call them, their waiters. They serve your tables. All right. Well, with that, we're now
I don't get it.
You don't get it. You know, like when you go to a restaurant, there's waiters.
Okay.
And so
I'll have to pass on that one. I don't get it.
Okay,
It's going over my head.
Just a straight hard pass. All right, got you. But anyways, we're going to be moving on down into the area of the canal near Klishkivka, where we saw a Ukrainian sniper team at work. They clocked in, and then they clocked some Russians right out. Watch as they stamp their timesheets. You see the Russians right here. They are...
Hasta la vista, baby.
Oh.
Oh. All right. And so with that,
all right.
all right. So, all right then. With that, we're now going to be moving on from that clip and a little bit further behind the lines into the area of Slavyansk. And this is a little bit of a, I guess you could say, more sensitive video, so we're going to kind of curtail our comments on it, as it is a police body cam from a Ukrainian police officer showing one of the rockets that struck a building yesterday, killing 1 and injuring 4, hitting that building. And so I'm really going to let this one play without any commentary. And so, without further ado, here's the clip.
Бери аптечку. Давай в подъезд, быстро в подъезд. Забегай в подъезд. Давай в подъезд, быстро. Где ребенок? Там вверху дед, жена. Дед стоит, кровотечение. Жена не знаю где. Не, великий. Да, там еще ребенок. Да. Не спеши. Тихо, он зацепился, смотри. Там у них вот квартира сразу. Вот Батькович говорит в той комнате. Они там.
Подожди, сейчас. Давайте, спускайтесь.
Вы себя как чувствуете? Что болит? Голова тошнит, нет? Так, осторожно, чтоб... Помощь надо? Поехал!
Нашел? Тут є хто? Ага, нікого нема. Ой. Давайте чи відкидувати якось. Знайшов?
Тікай.
Є хто живий?
Володь, что там, Володь?
Девочка живая.
Говорите с ней.
А?
Говорите с ней. Одеяло. Пусть лежит под одеялом. Если лежит стекло. Еще стекло. Стекло, собирай, собирай. Стекло аккуратно. Тут одеяльце, мужики, есть надежда. Одеяло. Давай. Вторую руку. Все, отойдите, пожалуйста, от дома, будем сейчас раскапывать, искать. Голова.
Goodness. I gotta say, that's a rough video for sure, and once again showing the bravery of the Ukrainian police to deal with the situation, but also the terror that comes with a Russian terrorist attack. It's sickening. It's really sickening to see the kind of, I guess you could say, situation that actually plays out in these buildings, because we see plenty of pictures and plenty of videos all the time of buildings that have been hit like this, but in every single one of those buildings at one point when that first bomb or that first missile hit it, it was much like a scene like this one. And that's happened to thousands of buildings across Ukraine, and the Russians continue to do it with each passing day of this war. One day, the Russians who are doing this will be held accountable. I don't think they'll ever be held accountable in court, but hopefully on the battlefield, they'll have their day. And so with that, we're going to be moving on from that clip, of course, an unfortunate scene and a very, I guess you could say, detailed look at what happened during that attack on Slovyansk yesterday. And we're now going to be moving out of the Slovyansk area and on down into the Donetsk region, where we saw today around Novobakhmutkivka an AS-90 on the battlefield in Ukraine. These AS-90s were, of course, provided by the British. There's been about 30 of these delivered to Ukraine, and this is one of them in a picture right here. We can see that the Rasputitsa is actually still quite strong, even in mid-April in this area of the front line, but this does not deter the AS-90, which simply does not care and continues to do its job regardless of how tough it becomes. I've got to say, quite a nice-looking SPG, and of course, great to know that the British did provide 30 of these things, which will help to make the Ukrainian artillery even more effective. This may also be an AS-90 that we're seeing right here, the barrel of, but we can't really tell for certain. Still great to see, though. We're now going to be moving on from that bit of news and on towards Avdiivka, where we saw that in Avdiivka, the Ukrainians were actually able to capture a large group of Russian prisoners, which shows that they must have overrun a part of the Russian line well enough that they decided to give up. And you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 Russian prisoners, an entire platoon worth of Russian prisoners. And it's great to see that they are of course, captured, and hopefully they'll be going towards the prisoner exchange fund fairly soon. We didn't get a lot of video or picture evidence of what happened during the Battle of Avdiivka today, but of course the front lines do remain stable, and it appears that the Ukrainians were able to stop any Russian pushes that were occurring today. We're now going to be moving out of the Donetsk area and even further on down the lines and into the direction of Konstantinivka, where we saw a Russian tank on fire. And you might remember that.
Wait a minute,
one,
is that the
Matthew.
song?
That's the one.
We
bounced out. Not today.
I don't think that's copyrighted though.
I don't know if it is or isn't. I'm kind of scared because tonight's been a night of very close calls, and I don't know if
Should
we
we risk it?
No.
I don't know, man. I want to hear that song so bad.
we can play it after the stream. I'm scared that it's going to have something in it, though, where we get into trouble. Because we've hardly missed getting into trouble multiple times tonight, being completely honest. So...
The building is on fire.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God.
The building is on fire.
Man, that's a whole other part of the track.
Yeah, they missed the good part.
Yeah, that's it. They missed the part where they go, we bounced out. But anyways, let's go back and just watch the clip for what it is. They drop a grenade into the hatch of the T-72. The grenade explodes, causing the ammunition to detonate, and we can now see the ammunition going supernova. And with that, that's the end of the clip, but another Russian tank burning in the fields. And always great to see. We always love to see it. Never hate to see it. Always love to see it. And of course, good to know. And good to see. We're now going to be moving on from that little clip of news and on down the southern front and into the rear lines of the Ukrainian area where we saw the Russians using a glide bomb. We do not know how this glide bomb made it through the Ukrainian front lines, but we did see that the Fab 500 apparently guided through some kind of a crude, I guess you could say, guidance system, was able to hit some kind of a target out here in the fields. We don't know what kind it is. We can't visibly see it, but here's the sound of the glide bomb coming in and, of course, slamming into its target. Right with the glide bomb, we can see the explosion right over there.
The rooster knew what was happening.
That rooster didn't know what was up. That is true.
The American rooster.
Пиздец.
Quite a sizable explosion. Once again, we don't really know.
Вот это все, пиздец.
We don't really know what it hit. And so with that, that's the end of that clip. We can hear the roosters going wild in the background, and we don't really know how that made it through air defense, but still, it does appear that the Russians were able to use some kind of a glide bomb today. With that, we've actually covered, believe it or not, all of the news, north to south, east to west, and also even out of Ukraine and in a country like Sudan. And so, without further ado, we're going to be moving on up to the city of Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 416 of the war. And so, here is the speech. Speech!
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці. Говорив сьогодні з президентом Франції Макроном. Тривала розмова, майже 1,5 години встигли пройтися усіма ключовими безпековими питаннями, що є на порядку денному. Нашому в Україні дуже важливо, та загалом в Європі. Це фронт, наші можливості рухатись, діяти, повертати свободу та справедливість людям на тих територіях, які були ще, на жаль, окуповані Росією. Обговорили міжнародні контакти. І наші, і Франція. Мануель поінформував мене про деталі та підсумки візиту в Китаї. Дякую за чітку підтримку тих принципових речей, які об'єднують всю нашу антивоєнну коаліцію. Росія повинна забратися з території України, всієї України та всі окупанти. Кожен пункт статуту ООН повинен запрацювати знову. Жодне з російських порушень міжнародного права не можна ігнорувати. Саме на таких принципах повернуться безпека і спокій в міжнародні відносини. Саме для цього є українська формула миру, абсолютно реалістична, цілком конкретна. Її також сьогодні детально говорили з Макроном, як і міжнародні заходи, які ми готуємо на цей рік, зокрема Вільнюський саміт НАТО, наша спільна позиція на саміті у Литві. Всіх держав-учасниць може бути саме такою амбітною, якої потребує європейська безпека. Впевнений в цьому. Дієві гарантії безпеки для України, тобто насправді для міжнародного порядку, заснованого на правилах, потрібні ще до нашого вступу в Альянс. До речі, у Вільнюсі відбулася зустріч держав-членів спільної слідчої групи з розслідування злочинів окупантів в Україні. Одним із результатів зустрічі. Є угода. Якраз вчора її підписала угода про спільне розслідування не лише російських воєнних злочинів, але й злочину геноциду. Ми забезпечимо на всіх рівнях, зокрема на юридичну повну відповідальність Росії за скоєне проти України українців. Дякую всім партнерам, хто допомагає наближати вироки для окупанта, для російських вбивців і терористів. В Слов'янську на Донбасі зараз ще триває пошукова операція після російського ракетного удару, що стався вчора. Є інформація, що під завалами будинків ще є тіла загиблих. На жаль, лише один цей удар терористів пошкодив, зруйнував більше 50 житлових будинків, із них більше 30 багатоквартирні. Поранених більше 20 людей, станом на цей час загиблих вже 11. Серед них зовсім маленька дитина, хлопчик 21-го року народження. Мої співчуття рідним, всім, хто втратив близьких. Нікому з тих, хто винен в цій агресії, не можна нічого пробачити і забувати. Сьогодні оприлюднені ще 2 санкційні укази проти осіб та компаній, які розділяють провину за цей терор або допомагають йому. Зокрема, це санкції проти осіб, які пропагують державу-терориста, прикриваються спортом, проти тих, хто пов'язаний з її посадовцями. Окремий перелік – це IT-компанії, які спонсорують терор чи дають цифрові можливості для продовження агресії. Всі українські санкції синхронізуємо з санкціями глобальними. Це неминучий процес. Дякую всім міжнародних інституціях, державах-партнерах, хто працює разом з нами, з урядовцями, з РНБО, спецслужбовцями, з нашим офісом. Санкційний тиск на всіх, хто винен в цій агресії, блокування їхніх активів, можливостей на рівні усього світу. Це самозахист світу і вже зараз від будь-яких інших можливостей агресії. Повернення миру та його стабільність не мають альтернатив. Дякую всім, хто допомагає нам, Україні. Слава усім нашим солдатам, хто в бою проти терористів. Повернемо справедливість як гідну пам'ять про усіх, чиє життя забрала Росія і її терор. Слава Україні!
Well, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky, and that wraps up our day 416 news summary of the war in Ukraine and also the coup in Sudan. I thank you all so much once again for watching. If y'all did enjoy, make sure to hit the like button, make sure to subscribe, and also make sure to share this with your friends, and of course help the Lee Spring Army to grow. If y'all haven't seen, make sure to peep the Twitter, or Peter, the Twitter's here. Because it does, of course, count, and also helps the Lee Spring Army to spread out even further than it was before. And so with that, thank you all so much once again for watching tonight. I hope you all have a great night, and of course, for those of y'all who will be staying, we'll be moving into the question segment and covering all of the super chats that we've gotten that, of course, help this channel to keep on running, and as many live chats as we possibly can. And so with that, let's get into the polls.
All right, and with that being said, during our last question segment, we have 5 polls to address. And the very first one says, Japanese Prime Minister Kishida was attacked with a bomb before giving a speech yesterday, and what are your thoughts? 53% think it's an assassination attempt, 16% say unsure, and 31% said it was probably just a protester. Now, one thing, I did see the video of the incident. First of all, the Japanese police or law enforcement absolutely, I guess you could say, put the hurt on that guy that threw the device and dragged him and smeared him along the pavement after he threw it. So,
oh man, they treated that man
definitely
like
could see that they jumped. But one thing, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think it was a lag.
There. Yeah, yeah, you lagged there badly. It was terribly. But dude, they dragged that guy like a napkin on a dinner table trying to get up some ketchup. They sat there and they dragged that man across that gravel. Man, you know, his knees were messed up.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I've noticed, though, with the Japanese Secret Service is they seem to be a little slow to respond whenever there's an incident that happens. For example, less than a year ago, Shinzo Abe was assassinated with some kind of homemade shotgun, also in the street, kind of similar to this attack with the bomb that Kishida experienced. I'm not really sure if it was an assassination attempt or a protester. We do know that the tensions in the region are pretty high. It could have been anyone. It could have been maybe a North Korean-inspired agent. It could have been anything. So I'm undecided. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it's a very interesting situation. I don't really know what's really going on with Japan, because Japan has been relatively stable for the past several decades, at least politically. And we see that that's starting to change. But Shinzo Abe was assassinated. Now we've seen that the current prime minister and I'm trying to think, he is not the most unpopular one because Shinzo Abe stepped down. The next prime minister came in. He was so unpopular, he quit within like a few months. And now there's this guy, and I don't really know a lot about him or his name, to be honest with y'all. But it's very weird to hear that he has also been subject to what appears to be an attempted assassination. Of course, whatever it was, they say it was actually some kind of a road flare or something similar. I did see a picture of it. It was some kind of a cylindrical metal object. It looked more like a pipe bomb to me than a road flare. But it didn't go off. Nothing went off at all. So we don't really know what the hell that was and what the guy's plans really were. But it is bizarre to see that the Japanese are starting to have a pretty decent issue with assassins trying to kill, I guess you could say, leading figures of their country. So fairly weird. And actually, I saw Dupper Bob say North Korea is attacking. Maybe, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, the North Koreans being this forward with it, though, usually they're kind of like in the background, like, you know, hey, go smear this thing on this guy for a game show or something. They usually don't sit there and say, hey, take this pipe bomb and fling it at the prime minister. Like, they usually don't say or do things like that. And usually that kind of anger is directed at the South Koreans, not the Japanese. But it is weird. I don't really know what to make of it, but the situation in Japan is getting a little wild. And just in case many of y'all are wondering, and y'all are like, what? The Japanese were never like this. They were at a time. There's actually been some crazy stuff that has happened in Japan. Just trying to think of a few things. There was that time that Japanese communist leader got stabbed by some college student with a katana on stage in the 60s, and he bled to death up there. There was also the Japanese porn star who thought he was the reincarnation of some World War II fighter pilot who got a Cessna from a Japanese airfield and then ran it into a Yakuza leader's house, and I think he killed him with it. There's also this guy, I forgot his name, but he was a cult leader in Japan, and he actually had plans to release sarin gas. And he actually had the sarin gas, by the way. There was enough of it that he could possibly do it. He planned on killing off the entire population of Tokyo, and the bombs were set up. Like, they were supposed to blow up, but none of them did except for one in a subway. And it killed, like, I think, like 30 people or so, but it could have been hundreds of thousands that were killed. There's always been some wild stuff going on in Japan. A lot of people think Japan is a really tranquil place, and it is somewhat, but in other times not so much. You know, it's a little bit of a strained place. And also, wait, what the hell? I just saw something that she banned. Oh man,
yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, I don't even know what the hell that's supposed to mean. Because we're brothers, you know. I don't even know what that meant. Like, that was one of the worst roasts I've ever seen. He's been asked to leave the LSA forever and go back to the penal colony. So have fun over there and clip that. But anyways, I don't really know what's going on in Japan, but it's a very strange. It's kind of going kind of wonky right now. I guess that's the best way I can say that. So with that, I hope that does address that the best we can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next poll says, UK intel says new Russian conscription laws indicate that the conflict will last years, and Putin seems to understand that. And what are your thoughts? 49% said they are right, it's going to be a prolonged war, 10% said unsure, 24% said can't really reach that conclusion, and 17% said they are wrong, Ukraine will win fast. Now, if this conclusion by UK intel is accurate, and Putin does understand this is going to be a very prolonged war in Ukraine for many years, then Putin should also know that Russia is almost certainly going to lose the war because their economy simply can't hold out for a few more years, prolonging this conflict in Ukraine. So if he hasn't come to terms with reality yet, he probably never will, and that just means any attempts by any other countries to try to end this diplomatically are almost certainly going to fail, if we didn't already know that already. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, if the Russians do view it as being a long war, and it seems as though they're starting to head in that direction of saying it is a long war, their doctrine isn't really supporting that, because they're still conducting massive offensives. I mean, if they really wanted to win this war, in my opinion, what would be the smartest for the Russians to do at this point is to just literally wait it out and not do anything. That would probably be the best thing that they could really do, because they've run out of equipment, they've run out of supplies, they can hardly supply their forces as it is. They're all poorly trained. Most of them are conscripts at this point. That is certainly not an offensive army. The best thing for them to do would be what the Germans did in 1915 in the First World War, and hold the ground they have and wait for the Ukrainians to try and conduct offensives and just focus entirely on the defense. Because all they have to do is wait out the West in Western support and hope that eventually things happen in the West where they stop supporting Ukraine, and then they can probably get away with keeping Ukraine in what they control right now. That's a way the Russians could win. But they're not doing that. They're still on the offensive. They still have in their mind somewhere that they want to end this war soon, no matter what. And then their results are abysmal. Like, it takes them 7 months to take one town. You know, and it's like, there's no way in hell they're going to be able to win this war, in my opinion. It doesn't matter what they try and do, unless they went on the defensive and they just tried to wait out Western patience. That's really the only way they can win. So if Putin realizes it's a long war, he probably realizes it's going to be inevitable that they will lose. It really just is the only way it can turn out at this point, because they won't be able to wait out Western attention span. While the public may stop paying attention, the government won't, especially the U.S. government or the Western governments as a whole. Just think, we were in Afghanistan for 20 years. We were in Iraq for 10. You know, and a lot of people stopped caring about Iraq and Afghanistan after the first few years, and yet we still stayed over there and put in massive amounts of funds and efforts and forces into keeping those areas under control until we left. And then either handing it back over to an Iraqi government or letting the Afghan government literally collapse within like a week, and then the Mujahideen, now the Taliban, got in control. So, you know, there really is no way for them to wait that out. No way at all. So if he does realize it's a long war, he should realize the Ukrainians will continue to be supported. If they go on the defensive, they're really just waiting for the Ukrainians to build up enough forces and be technologically advanced enough that they'd be able to wipe the Russians off the floor. So regardless whether he realizes it is a long war or not, there really is no way for them to win it. So with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next poll says, Ukraine says that the Battle of Bakhmut is once again highly intense and some territory lost. And what are your thoughts? 42% said Ukrainians are getting pushed out. 14% said unsure. 22% said the analysis is inconclusive. And 23% said Ukrainians are holding solidly. And at this point, I am kind of at a loss for what to think is actually happening in Bakhmut. I'm hearing reports that they're holding solidly. Then I'm seeing some things, for example, from the ISW, which indicates that maybe they're not. It seems like depending on who you ask, you get a different answer. So I would say the analysis is inconclusive, and I really simply don't know. And I'm not sure if really anybody does at this point. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say, considering that we've heard rumors that the Ukrainians pushed the Russians off the railway station. The Russians have then retaken the railway station. Now the Ukrainians are pushing them off again. We really don't know what's going on right now in the city. It may be that the Russians are hitting a dead end now that they've made it to the train station, but at the same time, they are slowly pushing the Ukrainians out. Of course, it's taken forever, and it's taking them an unbelievable amount of casualties. But I do think that it will, in my opinion, be inevitable the Ukrainians do lose the city. We've been expecting that for a while now. We've been waiting on that for several weeks, and it's not like anyone's going to look at the Ukrainians with shame if they give up the city. They defended it for nearly 7 months. They've inflicted tens of thousands of Russians dead. Hundreds, if not thousands, of armored vehicles have been destroyed. It's been a successful battle for the Ukrainians as far as inflicting damage and attriting Russian units. So it's not really like there's anything for them to sit around and continue to fight for. You know, and if they're saying that the city is a supply hub and it's important to hold it for that reason, they don't really control a lot of Bakhmut anymore. I believe they only control around 25% of it. 75% of it is controlled by the Russians. So, you know, it never was fought for that reason. I'm just going to say that. That was clear at the start. It was really only fought for because this was the closest thing the Russians could take that had any kind of significance at all. And the Ukrainians decided it had a great geographical value in defending it. And so they inflicted massive amounts of Russian casualties. That's how the battle unfolded. But I just can't see myself the Ukrainians holding Bakhmut for long, in my opinion. And it's not even important for them to. It was really about inflicting losses. They've done that. So if they have to withdraw, there's nothing really lost, in my opinion. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next poll says Texera, who is the alleged classified document leaker, has been charged in federal court and faces a 15-year maximum sentence. And what are your thoughts? 47% said if guilty, 15 years is appropriate. 10% said unsure. 39% said if guilty, 15 years is not enough. And 4% said I don't think he's guilty. Now, of course, we haven't changed our position. We still think innocent until proven guilty. But speaking hypothetically, if he was found guilty, I personally think that 15 years wouldn't be enough, because the most important factor in this sentencing, in this case, would be deterring others from doing the same thing. So the punishment would have to be so severe that nobody would even think about replicating this again if it actually is the case. I kind of feel somewhat sympathetic because the kid is 21 years old. He's young, and of course, when you're young, you can make stupid decisions. But at the same time, sadly, in my opinion, I think the needs of the country are going to have to outweigh that sentiment to ensure that it doesn't happen again. But big ifs on all of that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that 15, and of course, I still believe he's innocent until a jury finds him guilty. And whether a jury finds him innocent or guilty, I'm going to stand behind the decision of the jury. They're being presented with all of the evidence. None of us are going to be presented with all of the evidence. There may be things that we don't hear about. A jury will have all of the evidence, whether it be a court-martial or an actual jury by a normal civil court, a civilian court, I guess you could say. They will have all the evidence. So whatever decision they come to will most likely be the best advised decision. If he is guilty, however, I think that 15 years is incredibly low. I would actually advocate for a life sentence or a death penalty because treason like that is pretty serious, and thinking that he only gets 15 years for practically committing treason, if he did do it, I'm not saying he did, if he did do it, and that's what we're working off of here with these statements, if he did that, 15 years seems like a slap on the wrist for something like that. He may as well have just sold out the entire nation. Anyone who gives away classified documents or publishes them online to the detriment of the United States is committing treason, all in the same, and it's all detrimental to the country. And I feel like 15 years is a very, very small sentence for something that severe. Like, and I'll say this real quick, because I know some people are going to be like, what, death penalty, what? I don't agree with that. I think, regardless of what anyone says, we're not going to get into that political discussion because I know it is one. I think that regardless whether people like the death penalty or don't like the death penalty, I believe that the death penalty should be applicable in situations of treason. So, that's just my opinion. And Andy 4C said, that is not treason. Benedict Arnold did that, and we called him a traitor, and he committed treason. In my opinion, that would be treason.
Yeah, I think by definition, that would be treason.
And you know what? Let's pull up the definition of treason. Definition of treason. The crime of betraying one's country, especially by attempting to kill the sovereignty or overthrow the government. The action of betraying someone or something, or historical, the crime of murdering someone to whom the murderer owed allegiance, such as the master or husband. Okay, well, that obviously is not going to apply. But this one here, the crime of betraying one's country, that right there, that definition, that part of the definition, falls directly under what the guys did. What the guy has done. He has betrayed the country by publishing these documents online. And, and of course, I'm not saying he's done it. He's not guilty yet. He's innocent right now because we don't have enough evidence and he has gone to trial and the jury hasn't found him guilty. But if he did do that, that is treason. That would be the exact definition of treason. And I think that we should treat it as such. That kind of stuff should not be treated lightly because that just encourages other people to go, so what? I'll only get 15 years. That's not bad. I'll just go and leak that the U.S. government was operating inside of Russia itself with CIA operatives or something similar trying to create an armed coup. And that kind of stuff could be very detrimental to the country. And I think it should be treated incredibly seriously. That's just my opinion, though. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And of course, I'm still on the stance. This guy is innocent until he is guilty. So we're going to treat him like that until he's found guilty. Because for right now, he is innocent. There's not enough evidence against him to say he is a guilty man. And the jury has not come to that decision either. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And the next poll says, do you sympathize with the stay-behinds in besieged Ukrainian cities? 38% said no. they should leave, and it's reckless. 33% said I sympathize with them fully, 11% said unsure, and 17% said somewhat, but not really. And on this one, I'm with the 38% for sure. I think that the people that are staying behind are basically letting ignorance get the best of them. Of course, they love the place where they call home, but when you have artillery shells, a bunch of fire going on all around you, you can't stay in your home. I think common sense tells all of us that simply can't be the case. So all they're doing is endangering soldiers by having to come and try to get them out, and I think that is kind of selfish. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree with the 38% and say that it is reckless, in my opinion. They're sitting in a war zone. I mean, just the concept of sitting in a war zone and having crossfire flying over your head, that seems reckless to stay there, especially if you have a family and children, to go, oh, it's okay, kids, we'll just hang out under the gunfire and hope that a mortar shell doesn't land in this house and kill us all. It's like, that just seems reckless. And on top of that, like Matthew was saying, when an evacuation team comes to try and help you out and they're under mortar fire and they're in danger trying to get you out and you go, nah, I'm okay. That's really just kicking dust in their face, kicking dirt in their face for all the effort they just went through to try and make sure to help keep you safe and get you out of there. Just go, nah, I'm good. I'm just going to stay here under the rifle fire and the bombing and all. That's fine.
And they'll probably be yelling for help later, wanting them to come back and get them out when they're in a really bad fix.
And then it'll be too late. They'll probably be wishing they had left when the Russians enter their house, steal all their food supplies, and they're sitting there starving in a basement because they can't go outside because they'll probably get shot. That's probably what the reality of it is. And I don't think that's smart for them to stay. I can't believe the Ukrainian military isn't forcing these people to leave, because I'm trying to think with the U.S. military, I believe we would actually be forcing people at this point to leave the area, if that was the U.S. military. But you know,
hell, I wouldn't force them if they're stupid enough to stay behind and get slaughtered. I mean, that's their own call.
Yeah, but it's a liability to the soldiers as well to have these civilians in the area. Because who's to say you don't pass them and they have an allegiance to the Russians, and then the Russians pass them and they say, hey, the Ukrainians are over in that building over there. They set up an MG nest, and then you're given away. Well, I think we would actually have these people out of there, just for that reason alone. But then again, we didn't do that stuff in Iraq or Afghanistan much, but then again, it's not a large-scale battle happening in a city. There's a few instances of that, but not normally. It was usually insurgent attacks. But anyways, I hope we addressed that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and that was our last poll. So with that being said, we are moving on to our super chat questions and then all of our live chat questions, and we have some really good ones tonight. And up first, big shout out to BC Skyman. He puts in a $50 super chat. Dang. Very generous, and thank you very much, BC, for the support. And sadly, no comment to address. I think he's already gotten off for the night. But Enforcer, what say you?
He did. He threw in the $50 super chat. He said, I'm going to bounce out. Not today. And then he just left.
Yesterday.
It was today, and you're right. But I got to thank you so much for the support, BC Skyman. Of course, you've helped this channel to keep on running significantly. You've been an old guard in this channel. Of course, flying the banners of the LSA, making sure everyone knows about what we're doing over here, how many lives we've saved, and also keeping an eye on this channel. I gotta thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. I saw the super sticker you put in. It was the para riding the rocket into the distance and exploding. And I've got to thank you so much once again for the support. You are a legend. And of course, the support means a lot to us, because without it, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing ad-free, sponsor-free, and be able to say what we want and do what we want on here. And of course, there's still limitations. We always want to make sure that y'all are fairly happy with the news as well. Kind of like the Sudanese segment. And to be honest with y'all, I'm going to be a little honest with y'all. The plan was to kind of weigh in on the Sudanese segment a little bit extra tonight, because there wasn't really a lot of news that came out of Ukraine today in terms of video and picture evidence. It was actually a relatively quiet day on the front line, and so the Sudanese news, of course, is going to be covered, but I added in a couple of extra clips because there just wasn't a lot of news that came out of Ukraine today. But of course, thank you so much once again for the support, BC Skyman. I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Truster1. He puts in a $20 super chat, and thank you very much, Truster, for the support. He says, for everyone under 20, we have always sent advisors into target areas. Everyone does, not weird or unusual.
And I thank you for the support, and that is true. We have almost always sent advisors all over the place. For example, let me type this in. U.S. advisors in Vietnam. let's see, there were 11,000 military advisors in South Vietnam by 1962. Only 53 of them have been killed at that point. But let me go down and try and military assistance advisory groups sent to assist in training, although numerous typically were considered to be technical staff. Special status of the personnel from their position. Although the term is not widespread, the functions continue to preserve. Let's see. Let me try and go down to who these guys were. Let's see. So I think it might explain here. Let's see. Trying to find it. Dang, you can't find anything on them. It just kind of says who their commander was and what they were doing there, but it doesn't really get into the exact details of where these soldiers came from in the military to then be sent over to Vietnam. But this is not unheard of. If y'all have ever heard of the, I guess you could say, kind of the military occupation of Panama during Operation Just Cause, because from the United States, there were large amounts of special forces involved in that occupation as well. So it's not unheard of to send the special forces to do things like this. So that's why when we heard about this, you know, well, at least in the classified document said that's like, well, yeah, that's who the advisors would be. You know, it's not just going to be Joe Blow, you know, from any random unit. It's most likely going to be special forces dudes. So with that, I thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running.
And the next one goes to Streb, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you, Streb, for the support. He says, from an old guard who usually watches the stream after, since it airs at 4 a.m. my time. And dang. He says, thank you guys for everything. This is the the Steam Game Fund. Enjoy, and please take a live chat question.
Hey, and thank you so much for the Steam Game Fund. I was actually, one of my friends was actually asking me if I could get Barrow Trauma, which I think I played a little bit before, but didn't play at all because, you know, there's only so much time in a day. There's only so much time in a day. So sadly, I never got to play it. But I will make sure to put that towards Barrow Trauma. And I thank you so much for putting that towards the Steam Game Fund. And thank you so much for helping this channel to keep on running. Because without folks' support, without people deciding that this channel is worthwhile in supporting and running, and being so generous to do that, it wouldn't be possible for us to keep this thing running. And I got to thank everyone who goes out of their way to help us to keep this thing rolling. Because it is a great thing y'all do, and I can't ever state that enough. It's amazing that y'all help us out like this. We're the only channel on YouTube, I believe, that runs entirely off of viewer support. I can't think of another one that does it, at least off the top of my head, because a lot of them run ads or sponsors or something, or a mix, or they do all of them. They take in super chats, ads, and sponsors. And we've cut everything out. This stream is completely demonetized, except for the super chats. And that's the only way we can keep this thing running. And I thank you so much for enjoying this channel enough that you would support us the only way we can be supported. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And did he want a live chat?
And yes, he did.
All right, let's get I was thinking maybe he'll segue into it. And then he just said, yeah. I was like, oh, okay.
All right, and the live chat question goes to, let's see here, White Wolf, who says, why did the Russians and Ukrainians exchange prisoners when they know these troops will go back into the fight?
Well, you know, just because, I'm trying to think of why the reason would be, at least in this war. Usually you don't want to take care of these people because the prisoners of war can't really do anything but sit around. You're having to feed them if you can. And also take care of them, and it kind of ties up resources. So it's really just better to hand over 100 to the Russians, get 100 of your guys back, because 100 of your guys can do 100 things. 100 Russian POWs can't really do anything, and they also are a drag on resources in a small way. Another reason to do it is that you always just want to get your people back, and so, you know, you hand over some Russians to get some of your guys back. There's a lot of reasons. It's just that, you know, looking at it from a perspective of the Russians going and rejoining the war again, I guess it wouldn't have that much of a point. But if you look at it from any other perspective, like, you know, just wanting your own citizens back, that's a pretty good point. It's a pretty good reason to do that. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best way I can. And with that, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and real quick, let me grab something from the live chat, and there we go. Real quick, before we move on to our next super chat, let's go over a poll that I put up. The question on this poll is, if it'll pull up, it's going really slow. There we go. The question is sharing classified documents considered treason, and what should be the penalty? 65% said it should be considered treason, and the harshest penalty should apply. 21% said yes and normal penalties. 8% said no, it is not treason, and 6% said unsure, undecided, or none of the above. And I would agree with the 64%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree with the 64% as well. And I actually see the Indy Andy 4C, who's been around for a pretty good while. He said, "You people make me sick. You're thirsty for a bloodthirsty, not thirsty for a 21-year-old, bloodthirsty for a 21-year-old who was probably just showing off. You want to kill him? Here's what I have to say." And that's not a bad point. I got to say, that's not a bad point. But regardless of how old the guy is, he's made it more than clear that he would be willing to sell out the entire country and probably put a lot of people's lives at risk. Who knows how many in reality? Thousands, hundreds, tens of thousands, millions? Who really knows? He's willing to put all of their lives at risk for nothing. And that is a very serious offense. Like Benedict Arnold. Like, or are we going to say about Benedict Arnold that, he just wanted to give over the papers because he didn't feel like he was respected in the American army, and we understand that. I don't see it that way. That's one of the few things where that's one of the few things I take that seriously. And a lot of other things, it's like, probably a mistake. Be a little bit lighter on someone. But with treason, you're practically saying with any act of treason like that, I'm more than happy to have as many people killed as possible, or whatever. People of my own, because there is no one out there in the world, in reality, in America, that will look out for you much like Americans will. America is a country of its own, and Canadians look out for Canadians, Americans look out for Americans. And it's crazy to think that someone would sit there and go, possibly, of course, he's innocent now, but if he's found guilty, someone would sit there and go, I'm willing to sell out all of everyone in the country. Just to sit there and, win, I guess you could say, one up an argument or one up some people and impress them with how much I don't like America. And look, I'll disclose all this stuff to try and make them look bad in my mind or something like that. That's how I look at it. So with that,
I would personally have to agree with Indy Andy 4C. I don't think that the death penalty should be applied in this case if he was found guilty. You have to weigh into consideration that he is 21 years old. Bad decisions are bound to be made by a 21-year-old. It's just a given. I think where we should focus some of our attention is, why was the 21-year-old given a top secret clearance, first of all? Maybe that should be looked at. And also, how did he have access to an area where the documents were apparently laying around to be able to take them off and take pictures of them and then post them? It seems like maybe something that should be held accountable from the top down.
But I would have to disagree. 21 years old is not really a kid anymore. That is a legal adult by every definition in the United States. Hell, being 18 for the most part, you're pretty much an adult, although usually a very immature one. At 21, you are an adult. You can't really look at him as a kid. I mean, we're gonna push being a kid up till like 30. Because it seems as though every time everyone ever talks about anything, like being a kid is moving up more and more. It went from like 16 to 18 to 20, now it's 21. Before we know it, we'll be at 30, and people will still be kids, and we can't really hold them accountable for much. Like you and me. I mean, you're what? I think right now 22, and I'm 21.
Yes.
And
I'm not saying I wouldn't make a stupid decision like that. I haven't made a dumb decision quite like that yet in my life, and I don't plan to. But then again, some people come from different circumstances and things like that. They might not have the same amount of training or common sense. Their parents might not have trained them well. Apparently, in this case, they didn't. And he went out and did something extremely stupid. And he didn't do it apparently for whistleblowing reasons. If he actually did it, he didn't do it to be.
Oh, you cut out there.
A hero. His buddies on Discord, and that is really, really beyond stupid.
I don't know. I mean, I consider that stuff regardless very serious, on any level, whether it be a 60-year-old general, whether it be a 21-year-old airman. That is very serious to me. In my opinion, of course, and some people are getting very, very hostile about this in the chat. And in reality, the guy is only looking at 15 years. It's more so of a question of how serious do you think treason is, in terms of the punishment that this guy should receive. in my opinion, I think it should be serious. And a lot of people are bringing up something that's a good point. This kid took an oath to pretty much protect the nation. And in response to taking that oath and understanding the duties and responsibilities he has as an airman, he decides to use them to possibly screw over the U.S. government potentially. Like imagine if the situation had been a little different. Imagine if the situation with Taiwan was getting serious and he had just disclosed classified documents from the Department of the Navy saying exactly where our carrier task forces were and where they would be setting up. The Chinese would have an upper hand on us and could possibly start inflicting massive casualties on our Navy and losses of ships and sailors. And, what would our response be then? Oh, he's just a kid. He made a little mistake. He would have destroyed our country for the large part and its dominance over the Pacific Ocean. And, what would our response be then?
I mean, it all depends on the circumstances. I think in this instance, some of the documents might have been damaging, but I think the overall consensus is most of them weren't. But I do get your point. If it was more serious, I think that should be, taken into consideration.
I can see that. That's probably a pretty good way to say it. And so I hope we addressed that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and we're moving back to our Super Chat questions, and this one goes to None of Your Beeswax, who puts in a $20 donation and says, with the release of leaked intel indicating the Ukrainian military is losing 7 for every 1 Russian killed, along with a need for an offensive to regain momentum, are the Ukrainians winning, and is the leaked intel wrong?
The leaked intel is wrong. There's been a lot of doctored copies going around, and also the original copy says that the casualties losses are incredibly low. I mean, according to the original classified documents, the Russians have only lost a few hundred tanks, and that's not true, because in picture evidence alone, we know that there's been at least 1,800 of them destroyed that has had a picture taken of them, and beyond that, there may even be more, so that is already well off on the original document. The casualty losses, therefore, must also be well off on top of that, because they're getting the tank losses that wrong, they must also be getting the infantry losses for both sides way off. I would say, really, that the Ukrainian and the Russian casualties on that document were incredibly low, far lower than they would be. They're both well higher. I would say the Ukrainians are probably in the ballpark of 30 to 40,000 Ukrainian soldiers killed, not including citizens, and then around, like the actual number we see, 180,000 Russian soldiers have been killed, give or take a few thousand. But I would say it's not necessarily true. The Ukrainians are winning, at least in terms of inflicting casualties on the Russians and making sure to maintain their sovereignty, because the Russians' original war goals was to conquer the entirety of Ukraine and then probably create some kind of a puppet state. And they have not been able to do that, and they haven't been able to push much farther out of the eastern area than just trying to encircle Bakhmut, which was only a few miles of movement over about 6 months. So as far as the war is going for Ukraine defensively, they are winning. As far as the war is going for the Russians offensively, they are losing. Now, if the situation changes and the Russians go on the defensive, then it's going to be in the hands of the Ukrainians in offensive movements to try and retake the country. So then the tables will kind of change. The Ukrainians will have to produce results in offensives to try and retake ground for themselves to be considered winning. The Russians will be winning at that point as long as they hold the ground and grind down the Ukrainians to the point they try and come to the negotiating table. So I would say right now, at the given moment, the Ukrainians are certainly winning this war in the amount of losses and also in making sure that the Russians are not achieving their war goals. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Captain Chris 1220, who puts in a $20 super chat. And thank you very much, Captain Chris, for the support. He says, thank you guys so much for doing what you do, and Slava LSA.
And thank you so much for the support, Captain Chris, and enjoying what we do. We try our best to make this as informational and interesting as possible. I'm sorry tonight that, really, honestly, I'm not on my A game tonight. I don't know if Matthew is either.
No, Matthew I'm not either, but I think I'm masking it pretty decently, but yeah, I'm not either.
You're masking it really decently, because I was like, man, is he having a bad night or not? I'm almost flat out.
I feel tired tonight. Like, I don't know what it is. I feel zapped.
I'm flat out exhausted, really, and to me it's been a miracle that the stream has gone so well so far, because I could easily see it have going a lot worse. But I still got to thank you so much, Captain Chris, for enjoying what we do, because we try and make sure, even when exhausted like this, instead of canceling a stream, we keep it running. So that way y'all know what's been going on in Ukraine over the past 24 hours, and we can also keep support for Ukraine going. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support and enjoying this stream. And also, if you enjoy our dedication to running this thing 6 days a week, no matter how tired we are or anything involved in the background, make sure to hit the like button to show your appreciation. It does help us out in the algorithms, and it helps us to reach more folks. And so with that, thank you once again, Captain Chris. I hope we addressed that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have an $11 super chat from Aquatico50, who says, "How did you get to Russian jail? I don't know. I went to the Kremlin for a plumbing job. After my inspection, I told the front desk the whole system was broken and needs to be replaced. I woke up here." I feel like that needs to be read in like a Rodney accent or something.
Wait, send a copy over to me on Discord and I'll read it off like that.
Yeah, we got to have this done the proper way. There you go.
"Oh man, I'm telling you. How do you get to Russian jail? Oh man, I'm telling you, I don't know. I went to the Kremlin for a plumbing job. After my inspection, I told the desk the whole system was broken and needed to be replaced. I woke up here. Oh man, I'm telling you. And this is a dive, a real dive. Oh man, I'm telling you. Straight off the diving board into the swimming pool. Oh man, it's terrible, terrible. Right to the bottom with a stone. Oh yeah, big stone right on the bottom of you. Oh man, I'm telling you. It's rough. It's terrible, terrible, I'm telling you."
But still, thank you for the support. And very interesting here, you wound up here. Why here? Why not anywhere else? There's a penal colony out there if you don't know. You could have gone there. But still, thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And very interesting here that you did wind up here. I'm more than happy that you did. And I hope that you enjoy it here and enjoy your stay in the Lee Spring Army. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Psyops. And he says, "Live chat question. And would you believe that I found hell and it's in Michigan? Please look it up. It's Hell, Michigan. And thanks. Also, I would have thought it was in Texas." Oklahoma #1.
All right, so let's look at hell. Let's see. It's not that far from Detroit. I feel like they need to move this. I feel like they need to move this a little east. But let's take a look at hell. All right, all right. All right, they got a dam. All right, they got a little fella right here.
"Welcome. These are the gates of hell."
All right,
damn.
Cool. All right, we got got a gate with locks. We got this guy once again. He's hanging around some flip-flops nailed to a wall. And they got the Hellhole Bar. And they're not pulling any punches here in hell. They're just letting you know what it is straight up. We can see America's shortest river walk. It must really be hell, because how in the world are couples supposed to have a time to themselves if there's a short river walk? Terrible, terrible. Let's see. Go to heaven for the climate, come to hell for the company. All right, interesting, interesting. You're really taking this to the next level. We can see the Hell Saloon, and looks like hell. Now that's just weird looking. We're gonna skip past that part. Yeah, you know, it's hell. It really, yeah, it's hell. It's hell for sure.
That's messed up.
Yeah, that's messed up. So thank you for the support, Psyops, and sharing that with us. I didn't know there was such a thing as real hell out there in Michigan. I knew that Detroit existed, but I didn't really know it was a physical place. And literally right next door from hell is the township of Hamburg, which sounds a whole lot more hospitable than hell itself. So with that, thank you.
Jeez, Psyops, I hope you're not going to hell. It looks like a bad place.
Yeah, I mean, like, that is, honestly, that's not really my kind of place. And it's like in the middle of a swamp.
That's, what's that say, Highland Lake?
Highland Lake. That's spelled like High Point. Now that is hell. Oh, that is hell right there.
Bad.
Yeah, that's bad. Real bad. Oh, terrible. But still, thank you for the support, Psyops, and of course helping this channel to keep on running. Can I say it enough? I can't. Folks like you do help this channel to keep on running, Psyops, and we appreciate every single person who helps to keep this channel running. It means a lot to us. Of course, it means a lot, because without y'all support, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing rolling. And I got to thank you so much once again for keeping us in mind and making sure to help this channel to keep on rolling, keep the coffee fund, the donut fund, and every other fund going and rolling. And so with that, thank you once again for support. I hope I addressed that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, while I reorganize the spreadsheet and try to stall while it freezes up on me. The next one goes to Hunter Stearns, who puts in a $15 donation. And thank you very much, Hunter, for the support. He says, I remember when I told, let's see. I remember when I told my partner not to trust you at the outbreak of the war in St. Javelin. As a lurker of the channel, take a question from the chat. I guess he's come around.
You told him not to trust me? What the hell is there not to trust? Hey, listen. I'm not James Vasquez. Hey, don't put me in that camp, dagnabbit. I've tried my best, in all seriousness, to make sure that we keep this thing as transparent and open as possible. That's been a huge goal of ours. And that's not even like I don't even say this crap to be corporate. That's just serious. We take it very seriously, being honest with people about what the war is going like, how their support is divvied out. Super chats, of course, go to us. They help us keep this thing running. We've never made a qualm, and we've never said anything otherwise, ever. And Sunday fundraisers to help support Ukraine. And hell, we even made sure to not do anything questionable, and we always run the fundraisers through YouTube Give every single time. We've never run a fundraiser out of it. I always try and make sure, it was a huge thing of mine, that our reputation is far more important than our reach. And that's why this channel has always been run this way. And I hate to hear that she said, don't trust them at the start of the war, because we tried. Dang it. Like, the whole reason I got here, the whole reason I am doing this, is because I had a friend in Ukraine. The goal was never really to be here for 416 days doing this, and no one ever thought the war would last this long either. The goal was for just a few days while the war was going on, because everyone said it would only last like 3 days, and no one knew how capable the Ukrainians were, to help my friend from Poltava get out of the country by telling him where the Russians were. And now I'm here 416 days later, still covering the war, and it became an entire ordeal. And now we've raised $900,000 in support, $900,752 in support of Ukraine. We've done all kinds of amazing stuff, and I think that is, I think that speaks for itself. And we're not, and people still don't get it out there. I was actually told by Matthew, someone still does not get it. We're not here to make. We're not really here to make people happy and go, oh, I really loved the video format. That made me feel all good and fluffy, and now I can go to bed knowing that I got the news just the way I want to hear it. Our whole goal this entire war has been to find the way that people would support Ukraine the most. And as far as I can tell, we've succeeded, because no other channel has outdone us on YouTube, rather than like the biggest one here. As far as I know, that's the only one that's outdone us. Every other channel was left in the dust, because they're always focusing on, oh, how do we make this where the viewers will like it? I'm always focusing on, how in the world do we make this to where the viewers are inspired or feel like they want to support Ukraine? That's always been our goal, and that's always how we've run it. I would never compromise on that goal either, because while some people feel good about the videos they make, no one else on YouTube can say they've raised $900,752 and then even take a guess at how many lives that saved. Thousands, I would guess. I mean, even more than thousands. It may be well above that. And I think that is something that this channel should pride itself on. Not the quality of its content, although a lot of people say it's great, and we are the largest Ukraine war live stream on YouTube. So, that's great, but that wasn't really the goal. We've helped out Ukraine more than any other channel has physically, and I think that's impressive, amazing, and that's what I want this channel to be known for. And so that's why we run everything as transparent as possible and make sure that the support gets to where it should be. But still, thank you so much once again for support. And it's good to hear that you are an old guard. You've been a lurker. I hate to hear that you said that, though, because I'm like, dang it, why? But we will make sure to get a live chat. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and the live chat goes to AF Kaplan, who says, is there any indication of the Wagnerites could be involved in this coup in Sudan?
No, not that we know of at the moment. We haven't heard about that. I believe the Wagner is more so involved in places like Chad, I believe, and also Nigeria a little bit. Also some other countries, I believe South Sudan and the Central African Republic, but I can't really tell you for certain because I don't know the exact areas where the Wagner is operating. So I would honestly have to declare ignorance on that one, but if I had to give you an actual answer, I would say probably not. And so with that, I hope that does address that live chat fairly well. Thank you so much once again for support and sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Hunter Stevens. Yet again, he puts in another $15 super chat. Excuse me. He says, I'm here because you proved wrong.
I'm here because you proved wrong. Well, I thank you for the support. I'm guessing, I think
it might be a typo in there, maybe.
Maybe. I don't know exactly what that means, but I do thank you for supporting being here and being a part of the Lee Spring Army, and of course helping the channel to keep on running. And that's another thing that we're very transparent about, to the point that people whine about it a lot, actually, is that we read off all of the super chats. Because, and this was the philosophy behind this, because, you know, a lot of this never gets discussed anymore, because, you know, it was like discussed for maybe like the first 50 days of the war, and then we're like, okay, that does it. And then a lot of new people have joined since then and never got an explanation. The reason why we read off all the super chats is because we are always blown away whenever anyone does send in a super chat and helps us to keep this thing running, because y'all have jobs like everyone does, and y'all have to work to earn that money. And at the end of the day, y'all have decided, for no other reason than y'all just enjoy this channel and y'all find it worthwhile to support us. And we're completely blown away, even if it's $1, that people have decided to support us at all. And so we made the decision way early on at the beginning of the war that no matter how many super chats ever came in, or how big they are, how little they are, we would call out every single person that ever sent in a super chat every single night and thank them. Because on other channels, you know, they just suck it in, you know, they're like, whatever, and they just keep running. I don't view it that way, because y'all have made the choice, the people who do support, to help this thing to keep running. And I want to thank each and every one of y'all, whether it be $1, whether it be $500, or anything in between, for helping this channel to keep on running, because y'all could have done anything y'all wanted, but y'all decided to help us to keep covering the news. And we're always greatly appreciative for folks who keep us in mind and help to support us. And so, with that, thank you so much once again for support, Hunter. I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Psyops, who says, I've noticed something. Why is it always that the groups are called the Liberation Army or People's Army or some combination of them? And when they are the ones terrorizing people? And what are your thoughts?
I would, well, I mean, it's a tough answer there, you see, because, yeah, well, the thing is that they almost always are the terrorist groups, you know. It almost is always without certainty. But if you actually look into the history of a country like Taiwan, or also known as Republic of China, they didn't have a name like that, but they did still commit kind of cultural genocide against the native Taiwanese. Every country's done it. You know, so I'm not going to sit there and go, oh, they condemn them, because, you know, look at what, and of course we can't say it because YouTube will come down here and smack our kneecaps off, but look at what China's doing right now in the eastern areas of their country. They're doing the same thing. Everyone's done it. But yeah, it is a good point to always lay out that the people who always have like the free fighters, the freedom fighters, or something like that in their name, they are usually the ones who are the most sketch. Or the People's Army. Those are always the very sketchy ones, because they always say that they derive their power from the people, which gives them a different level of ordained authority where they can go around just executing anyone, anywhere, and doing anything because it's in the name of the people, everyone all together, except for the person they're shooting. And so with that, I thank you for the support, Silas. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have another super chat from Hunter Stevens. He put in a $17 donation this time to correct something earlier. He says, you proved me wrong. Correction to error.
And thank you for the support, Hunter Stevens. And of course, correcting the typo. And don't send in another super chat for this, just to let us know in the live chat. But what did I prove you wrong on? Because I don't really know specifically.
You proved him wrong on, you know, he thought the channel wasn't serious, I think.
Oh yeah, well, if we did, I'm greatly thankful that we were able to. And one thing that's always funny to me is that sometimes haters, and these people always sit there and say, I've watched the channel forever and I've been here forever and we've never heard of their names before. They always say, this channel has changed. And ever since the start of the channel, the only thing that's really changed on here is how well I'm able to enunciate my words and the kind of voice that I speak in. That is really the only thing that's changed, because since the beginning, I've always just been me. Always. Matthew's always been him too. I mean, we have not changed over an entire year now. And so, you know, so it's good to know that we were able to, I guess, prove you wrong on that one, because we've always run the thing the same way since the start. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, and I hope that does address that fairly well, Hunter. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And the next one goes to Stony, 2717, who puts in a $10 donation. He says, this is a bit dated, but Russia's financial crisis is so bad they stopped paying bills for their spaceport in Kazakhstan.
It's Kazakhstan.
And yes, and it was thus taken by them. And what do you think about those?
I think that's kind of hilarious, because Baikonur is somewhere out here. Let me see if I can find it. Baikonur. Hello, everyone. I'm Bolton Bankrupt, and today I'm going to show myself out to go to Bakhmut. Let's see here. I'm going to have to just type it in. Baikonur. I was wrong. It's not over there. It's down here, in the middle of nowhere. But here's most of the launch facilities out here, and it's very interesting. Yeah, and that's actually the spot where Yuri Gagarin was the first man to go into space.
Didn't he die?
No, he didn't die. No, he didn't die.
Oh, he's still all right.
Well, he didn't die in space. I think he is dead now, but he didn't die in space, if that's what you mean.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm sorry, man. I'm a little hazy over here. I'm firing on like 2 cylinders. I'm sorry. I think I may have misunderstood you there, but
yeah, I think so.
But still, I think that is really telling, because they also haven't been able to pay for simple road projects in Russia either, due to how financially stretched they are because of this war. And so I think it's very telling of the weak Russian economy that the Russians possess. You have to remember the entirety of the Russian Federation, and let me type that in, Russia GDP. And this number's a little high because it's somewhere around like 1.6, 1.5 trillion right now. Compare that to the GDP of South Korea, which has a GDP of $1.8 trillion. And look at them on a map. And, you know, and this is always what's misleading to people. Russia is a massive country. It is the largest one in the world by landmass. And a country like South Korea, all the way down here, not that big of a country, outdoes the Russians economically. You know, and you really have to think about that. The entire Russian Federation is working off of a South Korean budget. It's not that big.
That's wild.
Yeah, that's insane when you think about it. They have to somehow pay for everything over 15% of the surface of the earth with a budget that the South Koreans have over this. And that also tells you why the South Koreans look so advanced compared to a country like Russia, because they have a GDP of $1.8 trillion, and all $1.8 trillion in their spending projects goes into an area smaller than a single U.S. state. So they can, you know, they can of course afford things like high-speed rail, great infrastructure programs, is because they're so wealthy for such a small landmass, and also there's such a huge population density there. Those kinds of projects can be continuously supported by the usage as well. But that is something always important to point out about the Russians, is that they are very poor for a country their size, and that's also why they lost fight more.
Russia just needs to go ahead and pack it up and shut it down, because this thing ain't getting any better.
No, it's not. I wonder, you know, speaking of which, they've been saying that the GDP of Sudan has been in decline. Sudan GDP. Ooh, yeah, it's been in a little bit of a decline. Oh my god! Oh my.
That's bad.
That's bad. That's really bad. That's not good at all. I didn't expect for it to literally just nosedive like that. It just went from, hey, look, dude, look. It's like, hey, we're climbing, and then just no. And then you just go back to the Stone Age. Jesus.
Sudan's GDP is like a Dogecoin.
Dude. This is literally like GameStop stocks. Like, it's an old-fashioned bull run right here. Oh my god. I didn't know when they said the economy had been in a small decline. I didn't mean that I didn't think they meant it literally jumped off of a cliff. Like, this is... Jesus. Wait, hang on. We gotta go look at Venezuela. Venezuela. It's only... Wait a minute. It's only $15,795 US.
15,000?
That's what it says.
Per capita, it says.
Oh, I was about to be like, what the hell? Wait a minute, let's go to this. Okay, so here is their gross domestic product, because that was the wrong one. I'm kind of doubting that, because they're talking about how bad the Venezuelans are off right now. So I'm kind of doubting that their economy is skyrocketing like that, considering that comparable countries like Colombia and Peru are flattening out. That's kind of a little weird.
It could be, their GDP is rising, but somehow the money is getting siphoned from the people and the government's getting it and all that stuff.
Wait a minute, correction. The last time this number was updated was 2014. That's why.
Oh.
Okay, that's
They
why.
don't take any recent numbers, apparently?
Apparently not. Apparently everyone just stopped counting in South America in 2014 and said, all right, pack it up, we're good. Let's check out another country here real quick, because, we're just here now. So why not? Croatia. I spelled that so wrong. I'm sorry to all of our Croatians, but, wow, they've just kind of been middling. Everyone
billions and billions and billions.
Billions and billions of dollars. The whole nation of Croatia has less of a GDP. Well, actually, it would take about 4 Croatias to be worth 1 Elon Musk. That's wild. That's actually kind of wild. 4 Croatians, 1 Musk.
I like how you referred to Elon Musk like he was a creature. 1 Elon Musk.
I'll take your Elon Musk and double him by 2 Bezos. But still, that's interesting to see. And it looks like everyone in the Balkans has been having kind of a rough economic time. Even Serbia and Slovenia have been following the same economic trends. That's interesting. One more country, Matthew? What country should we pull up? Someone said Argentina isn't well. Let's look at that. I've heard they're not well. Oh yeah, they're not well.
Ooh.
Wow, look at Mexico. They've actually not been doing bad for themselves.
That's those avocados.
Man, that's that free shavacado down there. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Man, you know, avocados are important when they get escorted by the federal police of Mexico. You know they're important at that point. They have celebrity ship status down there, but still.
Does the without saying, does the dust get counted in the GDP?
Good question. I don't know. Maybe. I don't think it really does. It's just an unofficial business. It's not tax deductible or anything. Let's see. It may said New Zealand. I'm sorry, everyone. I know this is a bit of a side note, but this is very interesting to look at. Oh, see, New Zealand's been Norway's been going through a rough time since 2008. Their economy's just kind of been dropping up and down all over the place. But New Zealand's been on a gradual climb, actually, throughout the years. It looks like the 2009 recession was actually a good point for them to just start skyrocketing compared to their normal growth over the past few decades. But this is all Poland. So, let's see, Trister said Poland. They haven't been doing that bad. Poland, I think we actually looked at them before. They have not been doing bad at all, especially compared to other countries that Google is putting in a similar bracket, like Greece and the Czechs. They're doing really well. Their economy has grown, I think, 10 times its size since they became a democratic country outside of the Warsaw Pact. It's 10 times larger now than it was. But still, very interesting. GDPs and graphs and statistics like this are always interesting to me. And when you really read a lot into their social developments and their government and things like that, really the most important things to make sure that economic growth sustains itself is a stable government. When governments become unstable, that's usually where the money starts disappearing, because people don't really want to keep their money in an unstable country, like in industries or development or anything like that. And that's why you see right here with Sudan, their economy dropped off in 2018, because that was when the first coup happened, where the military overthrew the government.
Also, we just looked at Poland, didn't we?
Yeah, I think we did.
Okay, good. Never mind.
All right. Well, never mind that then.
Brain's tired.
Belay that order. It's fine, man. It's fine. I am too. I'm so sorry to everyone. I know we've said that about 3 times tonight, but if y'all knew how we felt behind the scenes over here, it is horrendous tonight. I have to say, it's probably one of the roughest ways I've felt in a while. But we're keeping this thing rolling. Keep calm and keep her going. But with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support, and I hope we addressed that fairly well.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from Truster1, and thank you very much, Truster, for the continued support. He says, Andrew and Matt, and apparently this is like
a you cut out
quote. He's
no.
compass is most important. Oh, hello. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Oh, and Trister says, Andrew and Matt says, I learned that a moral compass is the most important guiding point For my company.
Ah!
That sounds like something you'd say if you're being interviewed.
Oh, that's like that corporate talk. Ew. I don't like corporate talk. I don't like corporatism. I'm not a big fan of it because it's all about like flash words and stuff. I'm more into common speaking because I feel like it's much more personable than corporate talk like that.
The only good part about corporate talk is you can game the system because all you have to do is memorize the flash words and you're in.
Yeah, but I hate that crap, man. It's like you hear the same stuff from everyone. It's certain said cringe. I know Tristan's doing it as a joke though.
Yes.
But I mean, like in a serious way, I think that it's much more important to do what's right than it is to do something that will get you further ahead at the end of the day. That's why we've never made memberships on this channel. We've never made it to where you have to be a supporter to talk in the live chat. We've never made it to where you have to watch ads or listen to sponsors, because in one way or another, we've justified those things as either being too monetized or just downright wrong sounding or wrong feeling. And so we don't do anything like that. And also, we also don't go into politics. Because I feel like this. People will make up their minds at the end of the day. I feel like people who want to call themselves news and push political opinions to people, that's not news. And also, that's pretty low down to try and sit there and use a position of trust to try and push your own views on someone else. Just give them all the information. If you're wanting to get into that field, give them both sides of the argument fairly. And then let them run with it. Let them do whatever they want with it. But don't tell them how to think. I don't like that stuff. And everyone does that now. That's the worst part about it, is that I feel like we're the only people out there right now that do not put in our own personal say or opinion on things like that. And we just leave everything alone and let y'all think what y'all want and don't get into it. But yes, that's largely, I guess in the corporate way of saying it, that's how we think. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Pele Rami, I believe it is, who says, "Cheers to you all, long-time listener and a first-time supporter."
And thank you so much for the support, Pele Rami, and being a first-time supporter. Folks like you are one in a trillion, actually. It usually, people who support this channel tend to support us regularly, but new supporters coming in, that is usually a new thing. And I got to thank you so much for finding this channel worthwhile, that you would support us, because it means a lot. And we always love to know that people do value what we do enough that they would actually support us and help us to keep it running, because it is an entirely optional thing. People can watch this channel absolutely free, never watch an ad, never listen to a sponsorship, never support us, and we don't hold a grudge against that at all. In fact, I feel like that's the way YouTube ought to really be. And if you like the content you're watching, then you have the option of supporting it or not, so that way you can continue. And so I got to thank you so much once again, Pele Rami, for the support, being a longtime listener, being a part of the LSA army, the LSA, for that long. I don't know how long-time listener means, but maybe several hundred days. It's cool to know you have been a member of the Leaf Spring Army for that long, and thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one now. I hope that addresses that one fairly well.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from E3ECO, who says, "If Ukraine fails to defeat Russia this year, will the U.S. scale back its support?"
I don't think we will, because we never did anything similar like that in Vietnam, Iraq, or Afghanistan until we were getting ready to leave. And that was usually after about 18 straight years of keeping up the support or just ramping up the support year by year. So I have a feeling that that would not be the case. I feel like public support would most likely start to dissipate because people have a very short attention span. And I already feel like just reaching the 416-day mark or even the year anniversary mark, a lot of people dropped off. And hell, I mean, like, if you look through our algorithms and how many people used to watch versus now, it has. Like, the numbers show there are less people who are interested or directly involved in the Ukraine war as there was at the start. And that's expected because people only pay attention to things for so long. But the government will continue to support Ukraine because it will always be within our strategic interest to make sure that the Ukrainians do win. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running.
And we have a $10 super chat from Santiago Flores, who says, good evening, and they should put all those orc POWs to clean up the bombed civilian building so they can see what they're doing. Viva Ukraine.
And I thank you for the support, and Slava Ukraini. And I would say yes to that, but I think there is a rule in the Geneva Convention that says that you cannot use prisoners of war for forced labor. There has been some exceptions to that, but there was word games being played with that as well. But I don't think the Ukrainians could do that without violating some kind of Geneva Convention article or something similar. Still not a bad idea, though, but we always want to make sure that the Ukrainians are staying within the parameters of international law. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And we have a $10 super chat from Philip B, who says, normally a silent listener, but the part of the leaks that bother me the most is China funding and sending the weapons, and appreciate you both. And thank you, Philip.
And thank you, Philip. Thank you for the support. And I would say that it is also concerning to me as well, hearing that the Chinese are supporting the Russians. Luckily, it doesn't appear to be major, however, because we haven't seen anything beyond ammunition popping up in Ukraine, and the ammunition we've seen has been like small arms ammunition and mortar rounds. And so with that, I thank you once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well, but it is still concerning to me. As on top of that, and with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
And the next one goes to Sharon Flynn, who puts in a $10 super chat and says, do you create that Google map that you use? It's super cool, and thanks for the great information. I'm pretty new to your stream, and I'm really liking it.
And thank you for liking it. And to answer that, yes, it is custom made. Everything on here is something that I've made. The little front lines, the little green and red lines that are supposed to indicate supply routes. Everything on here is custom made. All the markers I put down each and every night. It was a huge draw of this channel early on that we had our own custom made map and did all of our own things. But people started to complain a little while later that our front lines were not accurate and were not up to date. And so then we started to supplement it with the deep state map to show where the exact front lines were. But yes, the little Google Maps thing right here, this is actually custom made every single night. I go and spend about an hour just doing this part of the stream before the stream, and then I spend about another hour or hour and a half making a thumbnail, the Morse code translation, and the intro every night as well. It's as labor intensive before the stream as it is to run the stream itself. And you know, and it takes a good amount of effort. And I'm glad that you've been appreciating it and enjoying it, because I put my heart and soul into this thing. Matthew does too, to make sure that it is run as best as possible when we are live on air. And I got to thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does answer the question fairly well about where this map comes from. It does come from right here. You can only find this map on this channel. If you find it anywhere else, they're stealing it from us, and let us know. But with you know, kind of like a storm chaser out there somewhere, let us know. But with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat from Ralph Delgado, who says, I appreciate your guys' real honesty, and that's what keeps me coming back. And my question is, did the Russians' army between Moldova and Ukraine finally get pushed out?
Let's see. No, they have not. The Transnistrian Russian forces are still in Transnistria, right here on this little slither in between Ukraine and Moldova. They have not been pushed out at the moment, and they've been left alone by both Moldova and Ukraine. Also, I thank you so much for enjoying our honesty, because I try and be as honest as possible with folks. I feel like that's a very important thing of having an audience or having anyone listen to you, is to always be as honest as possible with them. And I thank you so much for appreciating that and enjoying that, because I feel like it's not really anything I go out of my way to do. It's not like I just sit there and I'm like a career liar off camera. But I still
call them out.
Yeah, that whole story was lied on. But anyways, I still thank you for the support and helping this thing to keep on running. Because I always try and make sure that we are honest at all times. I mean, if anyone even messages us off camera, off the stream, whether it be in Discord or whether it be in Twitter, we always try and be as honest as possible. Now, I will say this. If you go to Twitter looking for smoke and you get in the DMs, I'm not the one running the Twitter. Matthew is, and Matthew will return your smoke with fire. So just letting you know. I mean, you know, if you ever send hate mail that way, that's an easy way to get cussed out. We don't cuss on air, but Matthew will
well,
cuss you.
I don't try to cuss people out.
Well, I mean, like every once in a while I hear something that someone said and I'll look over the Twitter DM and then I'll see Matthew responding and be like, man, kiss my ass. I'll be like, dang. I'm like, all right. Because even when people say
I
stuff.
don't do that on the regular.
Well,
What
not on the regular, but I guess when people deserve it, I guess you do that. But yeah, we try to be as honest as possible and true to ourselves. I always try and keep nice, like even when people are acting extremely mean. I've made one exception though, and some of y'all may know what that exception is. But I usually try and keep nice there, and even when they sit there and be like, man, you're a piece of crap, it's like, oh, look at you, wah, go cry or something. But with that, to me said they don't want that smoke. But with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you once again for the support, and I hope we addressed that fairly well.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat from Richard Kame Gibson. He says, hello from Waikiki again. Here's a little aloha for the coffee fund. Do you guys like spicy? If yes, I'll send you a couple bottles of the homemade hot sauce. Laffy laffy, boom boom boom, chili chili chili.
And I thank you so much for the support. And also a hello to Waikiki from Hawaii. That's what he used to call it. But still, I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping this channel keep on running. And I would love to have the hot sauce, but we can't really eat or drink anything that comes through the mail because we're always very scared of being poisoned. And even though we know that viewers can be trusted, there's always a chance that we could be poisoned. And we want to make sure that we're not poisoned, because that's one of the main ways the Russians kill folks, is poisoning them in one form or another.
The Russians would love to send us the hot sauce
Yes.
with the special sauce.
Sir, the special sauce. I'll be like that food critic on Ratatouille, but instead of eating the Ratatouille and then going back to a flashback, my life would flash before my eyes and I'd fall forward and die. That's how it would go. So,
man, this hot sauce is like that uranium hot. This is hot.
Dude, I would be sitting there going, man, this shit got me. And then just drop dead. My head falls on the table and I'm just dead. But still, I thank you so much for supporting the incredibly kind offer. It's an incredibly kind offer. Do not get me wrong, and I thank you so much for it. But we always want to make sure we're not going to be poisoned, because if we're poisoned, we can't run the show anymore. But still, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well, and also aloha to you. And so with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $7 super chat from Putin will hang in the middle of the Kremlin, who says, I popped in again to say hello. Did I see a lot of bots in the chat before, or is it just my imagination? And yes, you did. You saw a few bots in the chat, and I got them all. They are gone. They won't be bothering you anymore. And if you see any more, let me know. But Enforcer, what say you?
You did see those bots in the live chat. You won't see them here anymore. but moving on from that.
Call them out. Call them out.
Call them out. Call them out. But yes, you did see bots in the live chat. It depends on what day of the week you come in. The bot farms were turned on a couple of days ago, again, apparently. So now they're back here, and we're getting rid of a lot of them. And then there's other things that go on, people sending their folks our way, and then we have to get rid of them because they've been told some crap or whatever. There's always stuff like that going on in the background. But yes, you did. And I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because helping this channel to keep on running also spites the bots. Because they cry, they seethe, they cope. And then they go back to doing whatever the hell they're doing. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right, and up next, we have a $7 super chat from AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang, who says, don't read if OPSEC. Let's see here. I don't think that'll be a concern, but I have a feeling that the Ukrainians are not resupplying Bakhmut by the main highway, but do it alongside a road towards Kremovy, and that may be why they are confident.
And that may be the case, but that road, as far as we can tell on Deep State, is also just skirting, actually it's skirting through no man's land. The T-0504 is on the edge of no man's land in some places, like in the city itself, but for Move, the road actually goes through the no man's land. We have looked at that before, and we've actually pointed out that's probably the second supply route for the Ukrainians at this point, but it's less likely. And also, a lot of the video evidence we get shows that their supplies and reinforcements come down the T-0504 instead. But still, that is correct. That is the second supply line that they do have and probably use. It's probably just not as heavily used as the T-0504. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $6 super chat once more from AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang, who says, since New Zealand only gives money to NATO instead of actual military equipment, can I pretend that New Zealand pays for the HIMARS ammunition? La 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 la.
HIMARS.
Yes, you could. You could in a way. I didn't know that New Zealand was a part of NATO though. Is
it?
I don't think it is. NATO? New Zealand has been a member of the United Nations. We are also a partner. What? They are? What?
What they mentioned that's like a secondary thing. Like the UN's pointless compared to NATO.
NATO member map. Hang on, we got to go look at this. NATO on the map. Find out on our map. Where is the NATO countries? Is New Zealand one? NATO members. So it doesn't show New Zealand as a NATO member here on the NATO website.
They're trying to fake it.
They're trying to fake it until they make it. Austria is not a NATO member. Serbia, Bosnia. Let's see. Russian Federation, not a member of NATO. Oh, bull. I'm just kidding. We wouldn't want them to be a NATO. Oh, look, they updated the map to show Finland as a NATO member. Huh. Nice. I like it. But yes, those are all the NATO members according to NATO. It looks like New Zealand is officially not in the Cool Kids Club, although I think they still kind of are. So, I guess my answer to that question would be I guess. And so with that, thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that addressed that the best we can. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
I think we should start calling NATO OTAN. I think that'd probably be more trendy.
OTAN?
Yeah, OTAN. You know, it's like, it says NATO and then below it says OTAN.
Isn't that what you say when you see someone, and since the last time you saw them, they got a tan, you go, oh, tan. And they go, yeah.
Oh, man.
Oh, man.
Oh, man.
I mean, I guess.
I'm telling you, I get no respect around here. I'm dropping dead over here. Behind the scenes. I'm crying. I'm weeping. And guess what he says? He goes, oh, man, I'm telling you. That joke wasn't good. Oh, man, well, I'm telling you, I can hardly think over here. I can hardly think.
Oh, I get no respect around here. I get no respect. But anyways, up next we have a $5 super chat from Vasila Tamba, who says, God bless the LSA.
Hey, and God bless the Lee Spring Army. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope we addressed that fairly well.
And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to JDevil711 Osman, who puts in a $5 super chat. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the support. That windshield wiper has better integrity than Russian tanks.
And that is correct. I would agree with that. It does. 100%. Without a doubt. Warranty guaranteed. Lifetime warranty guaranteed. And so with that, thank you for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And that was a pretty good one. I like that one. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a $5 super chat. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. From Still Thinking. Hello and good evening. Keep up the good work. What is the story behind the name of the channel? Tell me.
Well, that's a good question. The story of the name of this channel comes from a long, long time ago. Actually, I'll show you all this, because I won't show you all the video, but I'll show you all the intro. It's been hidden from view for y'all, but it's not for me. So let me go to manage my videos, and let me go and grab the video. So let's see, the date, we want to go to the first one ever published. The first video ever published on this channel was on September 5th of 2021. Now, if I remember correctly, it will have an intro. It does. So, this was the first video. It only has 114 views, mind you. And let me go over here. Wait, nope, wrong. Where'd it go? There we go. All right, so let me drag that over here. And I'll show y'all what this channel was originally. This was my intro for the first video I ever made on September 5th of 2021. Now it's not going to load. Come on. Here we go. All right.
Think tank.
Yeah. Oh, man. And then here comes the cheap, and then it showed some clips, and then it started talking about what happened in Afghanistan. Because Afghanistan, in around September 5th of 2021, had just collapsed, and the Taliban had taken control of the country again. And so the entire video talks about the history of Afghanistan from its ancient times all the way up to the present day to explain the societal changes and everything that happened. But back in the day, this channel was originally called Think Tank. And so you'll see down here, let's see, it includes the music. I got copyrighted on this video, which was great. But it was called Think Tank. And so I made 2 videos under the title of Think Tank. It was one about Afghanistan, one about what was happening in Hong Kong. And then I dropped off because it took me, and y'all wouldn't believe this, it took me about 120 hours to make this video right here because there was a massive amount of animations, like right here.
Assassinated, and communist revolutionaries took over the government led by Hafizullah.
Man, why do you sound completely different?
I mean, yeah, I sound totally different, but
yeah, that's weird.
There was a whole bunch of animations in this thing.
The Mujahideen started to gain.
This sounded totally normal back in the day. I don't know why it sounds so weird now in this video, but
countryside of Afghanistan, due to most of the rural people being more devout Muslims and believing in.
Dang, you sound like a completely different person in this video.
I do, don't I? That's weird.
In their eyes, this could lead to many problems. Firstly,
sound like on the verge of crying almost.
Population that live in the areas around Afghanistan.
Yeah, I mean, like that's crazy. But this was the first video I ever made, ever. And Think Tank did not take off. This video only got 114 views, and so the channel died for a little bit. And so I sat there and floated around, and then I came back as a gaming channel. And as a gaming channel, I had a little bit more success, but I was not happy with being a gaming channel because this was originally the kind of stuff I wanted to do. And so I decided that the gaming channel was probably going to die eventually because I was getting very tired of doing it. I didn't like doing it, but that's where the channel name comes from, the one that you see right now. Because my gaming name for most of my game accounts is The Enforcer. That is the name. That's my actual Steam name, is The Enforcer. And so, as a gaming channel, the name was changed from Think Tank to The Enforcer, and then it just stuck. And so, when the war in Ukraine happened that night, and I said, oh my god, the war has begun, yeah, the name never changed. I decided to never change the name and just keep it as The Enforcer. And so that's where the name came from, is when I was a gaming channel. But this channel was originally not a gaming channel. It was actually a current events and news channel like it is now, and it was called Think Tank. But it went under 3... Let me think. Yeah, I think it went... No. It went under 3 name changes, because for a while there, it was called the Think Tank, then it was called the Briefing Room. The Briefing. It went from Think Tank to Briefing, and then I found out the Briefing was being used, so then I switched when I went into a gaming channel to Enforcer, and then it stuck there. So, that's the story. And also, Serge Sigeli said, so what do you enforce exactly? Well, in video games, I used to enforce deaths. Like, I was racking them up in games like Verdun. I would have, like, 120 kills in a game and die, like, 15 times, which was great by Verdun standards. Or War Thunder. Which I'm also really good at, and so that's what I was enforcing, was getting people, down and out of the game. But nowadays, it's just the name of the channel. But that's the story, and none of y'all have probably ever seen this video before. We actually thought for a while about releasing these videos last year on April 1st and also this year on April 1st, but we decided to never release them because they're better kept to history, more so. But I thought I'd share them with y'all. Well, share this one with y'all because it's the first video ever made by me on this channel.
Mace said, was the channel ever called The Briefing Room?
Yes, I think it was called The Briefing Room, and that's why the Discord server was called The Briefing Room. That one never changed until it was shut down. We actually deleted that server due to the whole schism crap and everything. We just deleted all of it. But the Discord server never changed. It actually had the original logo of the channel when it was called The Briefing Room on it, and all that stayed. It was permanent, and that's why we made sure that it survived the first Great Schism, because that Discord server had been around before the channel was even called The Enforcer, and it was called The Briefing Room, actually. But that's the whole story of where the name comes from for this channel. It's been quite a journey, especially since September 5th of 2021, and I'm going to hit the like on that because it's only got 13 likes. Why not have a 14th one? It doesn't matter, but still. And so with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. thank you so much once again for the support. And Tom Exman said, "Gee, let us see it." We're kind of reluctant because I don't know if y'all would have a, yeah, I mean, it's solid information, but it wasn't a great presentation at all, in my opinion. Nowadays, looking back at it, and so we might keep those just hidden. But anyways, with that, thank you once again for support. I hope we answered that question fairly well with a long story of how we got here. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right, and Sibes, I did see that super chat come in. He put in a $5 donation, and he said something I can't repeat. So, Sibes, I don't know how you were thinking you were going to get that one by me, but thank you very much for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I thank you so much for the support, Psyops. Of course, we can't read those off because we know we're getting had with those, but I still thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because without folks like you, this wouldn't be possible. And so with that, we're on to the next one, and thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running.
And up next, big shout out to Thomas Kruger and Tom Schlick. They each put in a $5 super chat without comments, and thank you both very much for the support. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Danny Coco, who says Jack T will enter plea to protect sensitive info. He'll be out in 5 years. A young man's future ruined. Why isn't he tried in military court since he's active duty National Guard?
That would be a question that I don't really think I can answer. Matthew, do you have an answer to that one?
Let's see. He said Jack T will enter a plea to protect sensitive info. They can't force him to enter any particular plea. It's totally up to him if he pleads guilty or not guilty. Also, if you're asking if maybe they're going to offer him a plea deal, I really doubt they will, because this is such a high-profile and publicized case. Typically, prosecutors don't do that. Also, he'll be out in 5 years. In the federal court, you're probably going to serve the 15 years if you get sentenced to 15 years. That's hard time. I do agree a young man's future ruined. He would definitely have ruined his future if he gets convicted. And why isn't he tried in military court since he's active? So some people are under the misconception that double jeopardy would apply since he's already tried or charged in federal court. Some people are saying that he can't be tried in military court, and that's simply not true. He's charged in federal, and he can also get charged in military court as well. So I would imagine that's probably coming around the corner, and they simply hadn't done it yet because either they haven't finished the military side of the investigation or something to that effect. But I hope that answers the question pretty good. And Enforcer, would you like to add anything?
Now, I hope that answers the question fairly well, because I really wouldn't know a lot about how to answer that question in all honesty. And so with that, I thank you for the support. I hope that addresses that fairly well. And I'm seeing a lot of people in here, Matthew, who actually would be interested in watching the old Think Tank briefing room videos, the two of them. And I'm wondering, let's run a poll on that. Let's see if people would like to see them. Because I would be fine with putting them back out there, maybe for a short while for y'all to watch. Because, you know, they were interesting in their own right, kind of a snapshot in time and explaining how things happened. But keep in mind, it was more tongue-in-cheek humor, like a lot of humor was put into the animations themselves instead of anything else. Because the whole premise of the channel back then was very different. But let's see, should we publish briefing room video? And interestingly enough, y'all may not know this, this is a little bit of extra history about the channel and how it came to be. I was actually helping out the Armchair Historian, if any of y'all know who that is, Griffin Johnson, the Armchair Historian, with creating the game for his channel called Fire and Maneuver. I was one of the people for a short while there who actually worked on helping to develop the game, or at least test the game rules. And so I sat there and I listened a lot to how his channel operated and how it worked, and I thought, well, that would be really cool, and I've always been interested in talking about this stuff. Why not do it? And so that's how the channel actually was born, is that, you know, I was like, well, you know what, I'll do it. And so I made a video about Afghanistan, then made a video about Hong Kong, and then, you know, it didn't go anywhere. It didn't go anywhere as quick as I thought it would, because making it on YouTube is like hitting the lottery. You have to be able to know how to hit the algorithms just right with the right thumbnail. And sometimes still it doesn't even work, because the gaming market is really oversaturated. And so it's really hard to make it in gaming. It's really hard to also make it in current events and news and things like that. So, you know, that's how the channel actually came to be, is because I actually was a part of Armchair Historian's game testing team for a little bit. But yeah, that's a little bit of the extra story. And so with that, actually, Thomas Kruger said beta tester. No. I was not a beta tester. I was
Alpha
there.
tester.
No, I was there before even alpha. I was there before the game actually even existed, and they were on Tabletop Simulator just trying to figure out how the rules of the game would work. Like the game hadn't
Sigma tester.
Yeah, the Sigma male test. But still, thank you for the support. What?
I think you lagged. Lagged.
But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. At least give a little bit of the extra story. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, Serenity said in the live chat, military law is different to civilian law. You should know this, enforcers. And I did make that distinction a moment ago. The UCMJ is military law, and federal law is obviously completely different. So I'm not sure where that came from.
I don't know where that came from, but that's about to really make me angry. Serenity now! Serenity now! Man,
right.
I'm just kidding with you, Serenity. But with that, we're on to the next one.
And it looks like 75% said yes on that poll to publishing the briefing room videos. And let me close that one down real quick. There we go, in poll. And up next from our super chats, we have a $50 donation from Alex Ondrick, who says, gents, a quick thank you for your consistency and dedication to the cause, uploading near daily for over a year. You both have my respect, and thanks again for all the time and effort that y'all put into this, and I'll give my question to the chat. And thank you very much, Alex.
And thank you so much, Alex, for enjoying what we do. And I got to tell you, whenever people say that it's amazing that we've run this thing for a year, I honestly think it's amazing that we've run this thing for a year as well without as many interruptions as we have. We've only had, I think, two real interruptions to the stream running. One time, the internet just died out here, so we couldn't even start the stream. The other time, I did actually burn out completely one day, and we just called it off. Only twice out of 416 days of coverage has the stream not run. And that's unbelievable when you think about it, because that means over the course of 210 days, there was only one stream that wouldn't run. Like as a ratio, which is unbelievable to think about. And honestly, I don't really know how we've been doing it, because at times we're so tired. It's like today, really. Like today, we're so tired. I was sitting there and saying to my mom, while I was hanging out with her, I was like, man, I don't know if I can run a show today. And yet we still do. I don't know how, and we'll still run a full-length stream. And I got to thank you so much for enjoying that, because it really, I can always boil it down, but I feel like it's really cliche to say that we run this thing because we believe in what we're doing, and, we're saving lives in Ukraine, and it's very important, all that. I say that a lot, but really it kind of sounds cliche to me. So really, I would just want to say this time, I don't really know how it keeps running, but I thank you so much for enjoying this and supporting us to keep it running, because I find it it's one of my biggest deals to keep this thing running, and one of the largest things we pride ourselves on the YouTube side of things. And so with that, I thank you so much for enjoying all the time and effort we put into it. I thank you so much for putting in your hard-earned dollars into supporting us and helping us to keep this thing running, because that also takes a massive effort on your end as well. And I got to thank you so much once again. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we will make sure to grab that question from the live chat.
And the question from the live chat is going to go to Trister1, who says, why are civilians like that waiting? And are they waiting for the Russian occupation?
They may be. A lot of Ukrainian soldiers in the city believe that these people are waiters. That's their nickname for them. They're waiting for the Russians to come there. And so they are actively waiting. They are waiters. And so that's what a lot of Ukrainian soldiers have said in the city. And I believe that may be true, because why in the hell would you want to wait for the Russians to push over your house and then be in occupied Russian territory? That is a far worse fate than anything else. And I guess that's the only reason why, is because they want to live in a Russian Ukraine. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the question fairly well. And Tom Exman said, try an afternoon snooze. Well, I've tried that before. You can ask Matthew. Over the past week or two, I've been so tired that I'll come home from college, I'll fall asleep for like an hour, and then I have to get up and go to work. And then I still sleep after that, after the show. It's tough. It's almost impossible to get enough sleep. And Matthew can back me up on that, because Matthew sometimes also does not get enough sleep.
Man, those afternoon naps jack me up. Like, they just make me messed up for the rest of the day. I
They
feel like
do.
I'm in a fog.
They do, because I wake up and I'm like, where the hell am I? Like, what's going on anymore? And I'm sitting here and I'm like trying to be like, what do I do every night? I usually run a show, but what's the show about even? Like, I have to pretty much. It's like I wake up and I don't even know who I am. And that's tough. That's real tough to try and get through.
Who am I?
What happened? I bet you can't do a push-up, fatty. A push-up.
Wait a minute. Did you see that the other day that he slipped up and he said, instead of saying the correct name of the sports team, he said the Blacks and Tans in Ireland?
Come out, you blacks and tans,
Yeah,
come out and
that's-
fight me
it was
like
so
a
bad.
man. Tell me how.
I was like cringing. I was like, oh no. He didn't just say that.
it's like a Bushism. But anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well. And of course, with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you once again for the support, and I hope we addressed that fairly well.
All right, and up next, we have a $5 super chat from Craig Platel, who says, those Italian 109s are not Paladins. They are M109Ls. Paladins are M-109A6s.
And I thank you for the support and sharing that with us, because I didn't know the exact subvariant of SPG that was. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Kevin Kincaid 2, who says, what is your opinion on the channel The Dive with Jackson Hinkle? You should debate him since he is a pro-Russian channel.
Well, let me pull this up on my second screen. By the way, if y'all want to go searching through all of our videos, the first videos I ever made are actually up. I did that just a second ago during one of the questions. And so let me pull up this guy here. This guy. The Dive. Dive with Jackson Hinkle. And let's find it here. Oh.
How's it going,
how's it going, everyone? Oh, let's see. I like how the last video he uploads was 10 days ago, and it says Russia legally captures Bakhmut. Ah, yes, they won a court settlement,
Legally.
giving them Bakhmut, I guess. Let's see. Russia is supported. Colonel McGregor. Russia is supported by the world. You know, that's just pure delusion at that point. Who the hell is supporting Russia rather than China, Iran, and North Korea? No one else.
These guys sound like nutcases.
Let's see. EU energy crisis rears its ugly head. No, it didn't. Not 2 weeks ago. Let's see. Russia staging nukes in Belarus. Yeah, that's true. Let's see. And then Medvedev, Medvedev, the very trusty guy Medvedev, who's a Russian puppet, says, Ukraine is Russia, actually. Who would have ever thought that he would have said something like that, considering his alignment with the Russians? That's just shocking to me. And then 3 weeks ago, he says, Poland is entering the war. Yeah, right, pal. 3 weeks later, where are they? But let's see. And apparently, according to him, a certain news anchor on a certain news channel actually interviewed Putin just 4 weeks ago, and the interview was blocked by the National Security Agency.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, right. And then Russia trolls us over drone elimination. Like, they didn't go crying and immediately go, we're sorry, we didn't mean to, after they immediately hit the drone. Remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Oh, man. I wouldn't debate this guy because he's living on another world. There's a point in debating people that have common sense. There's not a point in debating people who just live in fantasy. So I would debate the guy if he was a realist, but this guy is obviously living on another world. And I'm sure that if I sat there and said something like, well, nobody supports Russia rather than China, Iran, and North Korea, he would say something like, that's what the deep state wants you to think, or something like that. And I'd be like, oh, great. There's always like this hidden thing, the aliens or whatever, But anyways, I hope that addresses that fairly well. Guy seems kind of cringe. And with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running.
And up next, we have a $3 super chat from Buddy Smith, and sadly, no comment to address, but thank you very much, Buddy, for the support. And we have a $2 super chat from Dupper Bob, who says, Slava Ukraine. And of course, Slava. And thank you very much for the support as well, Dupper. Then we have a $2 super chat from JDevil711 Osmond, once again, puts in a $2 donation, and says, go home, Russia, you're drunk.
And I would have to agree, they need to go home. quickly. Very quickly. They need to go home now. And so with that...
Sorry about Washington. Sorry about...
Nah, Washington. Washington. Nah, you crashed the car, blade. It's into the fucking bus. But still, thank you for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $2 super chat from Rocco World Domination, who says there's also a hell in Norway, and check it out.
Hell in Norway. Hopefully not as weird as hell in Michigan. Hell in Norway. Welcome to hell. It's a small town, hell. Let's take a look at the pictures. Welcome to hell. They have a Samoyed though. Oh, that's cute.
That's not hell. That's sweet.
They have some drums. Imagine seeing that on a train, though. You know, not knowing that that's a train station. You'd be like, "Oh no, not now! Don't take me!" No, but it looks so nice out there. Actually, like it's got a nice countryside and stuff. They have the sign up here in the mountains that just says "hell," just in case you didn't know. Wait, is that what? Is that an American Chevy Bel Air?
It looks like it.
It looks like it to me. This is hell. I'm just kidding. Chevy Bel Airs aren't bad. I know someone's about to get hostile about that. And there's a sign that just says hell. But yeah, this is not that bad of a hell. You know, there's been worse. There's a hell in Michigan that is literally hell. This one is not that bad. It doesn't really play into it too much. It's just that that's the name of the town. But let's see. This is what you say right here, Matthew, when you go into a loony bin and the people who are you know, in the loony bin are asshole. You call them COUP pricks. But with that,
oh gosh,
man, with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well, and it does not look like that bad of a town either. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
All right, and also shout out to Ronald Boyer, who puts in a $10 donation, and no comment to address, but thank you very much, Ronald, for the support, and I think that might be his first support to the channel, so big thanks to you.
And thank you, Ronald, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you help this thing to keep rolling. He actually threw in a question. He said, what weapons are still needed to bring an end to the illegal Russian occupation of Ukraine, and why hasn't someone stepped up to the plate to end this? Excellent question. The weapons that I would say they need are most likely aircraft. That's really the only thing we have not sent them at this point, and I would say they need them. We haven't sent them because we're scared of crossing a red line with the Russians, and that's something of a serious issue for us in terms of Western aircraft, because Western aircraft are leaps and bounds ahead of Soviet-era aircraft that we have sent, like MiG-29s, and so we don't really know about sending those or not. But that's the one category we have not addressed at all, is aircraft. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support, Ronald. I hope that does address that question fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
Huh, and you wouldn't believe it, but apparently, right down the road in Dadeville, Alabama, apparently there was a big shooting there just a minute ago. That's kind of wild.
Really?
Yeah.
What kind of shooting?
It just says at least 6 people shot in Dadeville, Alabama. I'm not really sure what the details are on that.
Dadeville? Hang on, let me type that in. Dadeville. I have to see if I remember where this is. Yeah, that's not that far from us. I mean, it's like near Lake Martin. That's weird.
That's kind of weird.
That's bizarre. I wonder why. You know, I wonder if it's one of those like gas station OK Corral kind of shootout things that happen every once in a while. You know, like the one that happened in Opelika a while ago.
Yeah, I wonder.
Like, in case y'all don't know, like, OK Corral kind of shootouts in Alabama do happen still. Kind of like it's the Wild West, like some groups of people will meet up at gas stations, and they'll literally just line up and slug it out. So that may be what happened there, but we don't really know. That's still wild to hear, though. Anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $2 super chat from Philip Fixes, who says, "What if you paid the POWs for their work?" And Slava LSA.
If you paid them, if you forced them to work and then you paid them, it would still be, I believe, against the Geneva Conventions. I think it's against the Geneva Conventions to make them work at all under any conditions. So I still think that wouldn't work, but that is certainly trying to get somewhere with it, and I gotta respect that. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Kevin Kincaid 2, who puts in a $2 donation once again and says, "Can you debate someone on this channel?"
I would, but we tried to debate a neighbor one time, and it went down in infamy as the Moscow Mike incident, which also brought forth the Great Schism. So I would do that.
We also tried to semi-debate another YouTuber, and I don't think it took it too well.
No, because apparently I heard that today they were talking about they don't like interview formats, and it's like it wasn't about the format; it was about saving Ukrainian lives. It was a fundraiser, you know. It's like I don't get it, you know. That always wears me out a little bit because it's like, you know, it's like, do you not get it's not about you, buddy? It's about the people over there who are dying right now and could use the surgery from Doctors Without Borders. You know, just saying.
And also the topics we were bringing up to, you know, talk about, and the intent wasn't to debate, but I mean, it was softballs. I mean, it wasn't anything deep. I just don't understand it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I didn't get it, you know, and it's, oh my God, you know, you want to go into it, but at the same time, it's like, why even waste the breath, you know? And we had nothing but good things to say about the guy. I mean, like, you know, he doesn't run that bad of a channel. You know, and then he goes and acts like it was the worst thing he's ever done, and I'm like, why, man? It's like, you know, like we brought you on to plug you, but anyways, with that, we're on to the next one. And I hope that answers the question fairly well, because we would, but one thing we can't do is vet people incredibly well. Like if someone's a YouTuber, they have a little bit of a track record behind them. But still, we're not really a big fan of bringing on guests really at all anymore. But there's a little bit of a track record there to see what they would and wouldn't do. With someone who doesn't have a YouTube channel, there's a little bit of a fear that they could act totally fine if we were to like vet them before they get on, and then they get on and they do something like drop a certain word that is really strongly anti like YouTube friendly, and then we get our channel axed because of that. We would have to probably do that in like a pre-recorded format where it's a video instead of a live thing, because a live thing could get us in big trouble if something went wrong. But with that, I hope that answers that fairly well. Thank you so much once again for support, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to M. Hushy, who puts in a $10 donation and says, the work you do is priceless. How do I get back into the briefing room? It fell off my list.
And M. Hushy, there is no way to get back into the briefing room. The Second Great Schism killed it. We decided, because we found out that apparently, although we had deactivated the server, the people who were dissenters, more so people who were sent by a certain group to try and cause dissent in our Discord, because this person is so delusional, they think that if they just were somehow able to steal our viewers and destroy our channel, they would be finally on top of things. They decided to try and have their moderators go through and at every single individual person, try and bring them over there. And at that point, it's like, you know what? Discord's too much trouble. And so we just deleted the thing. So there is no briefing room anymore. The briefing room and the LSA barracks is gone for good. But I do thank you so much for enjoying our work and saying that it's priceless, because we try our best to make sure that the news we deliver is top quality. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. And you know, that really angered me a good bit, is that the briefing room server had actually been around before the channel even existed. Believe it or not, the Discord server had outdated everything else. That Discord server was actually meant to be a foxhole community at one point, and I never did really get into foxhole that much to create a community or a clan on that game, and so then I just repurposed the server and everything I had done with it to then be for YouTube. And then, you know, YouTube took off and it survived the first schism, and really just Brad rebuilt the server from the ground up. You know, I still talk to Brad every once in a while. It's not often, but he's a great guy who really did a lot behind the scenes to help us out. And just in case if anyone didn't know, Brad was our quiet guy who never talked to anyone, but behind the scenes, I was always checking with him, like, hey, if anything goes wrong, here's the kill switch. He was the guy with the kill switch the entire time in case if anything went wrong, very wrong. He rebuilt the server. It then survived with the new moderators, and then the new moderators in the second schism, they caused enough trouble that we were like, you know what, it's time to kill it. So the Discord server that was older than the channel itself got killed during the second schism. And what was even better, and have you taken care of that moderator, Matthew, the old moderator that was popping up here every once in a while?
Now I gotta wait for him to pop back up to take
gotta wait
care
for
of
him
it.
to pop back up. Well, we'll tell the story about that. So one of the moderators that has actually popped up here still every once in a while, the former moderator, actually got harassed by someone on the server after we wiped the mod staff. And instead of contacting us and letting us address the situation, they decided it was best to say that we were encouraging people to sexually harass them and then tell everyone on Earth that that's what happened. Although that's not the case, because as soon as the stream ended, we went and banned the person and fixed the problem. But then they went and left and decided to go try and tell this whole entire lying story to try and further discredit the channel. And then they still have the audacity and the gall to pop up here and act like nothing's wrong. So now we're waiting for them to pop back up, and then we'll get them. So that's also another part of the story as to why the Discord is gone. And in case if they don't know, we know what you've been saying and we know what you've been doing. No to everything. And so with that, I hope I answered that one fairly well. And that's why the Discord doesn't exist. But thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Is Pimp, who says, "If you feel you can answer without bias, just cold hard facts. Should I get a corgi? I have 3 small kids and 2 other young pups. Lay it on me, enforcers. Keep up the great work you guys do, and Slav Ukraine."
Absolutely.
And for me, I'll tell you, get some corgis. Just beware though that while they're very intelligent, very sweet dogs, very fluffy, they do have a very, very strong herding instinct, and that's not even a joke. And they will herd the 3 small kids, and maybe nip at times too. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But corgis are the best dogs I've ever had. We've had German Shepherds, Siberian Huskies. Let's see, what was the other dog? We had some dogs that we knew around the neighborhood, but they weren't, I don't know what they were really. But unfortunately, what say you?
I say corgis are great. I would certainly get them. Corgis, no one tells you these things about corgis, and it's something you have to get them to learn, is that corgis are actually great companion dogs. They always say they're herding dogs and working dogs like that, but they're not. They're great friends, great companions. Both of the corgis we have, they do stop you from running, though. They will outrun you just to get in front of you and slow you down and stop you from running. And that's a part of their herding instinct, is that they always want people to stay in a group as best as possible. So that's one thing they do. They will do that to kids as well. But I haven't ever seen them nip in the attempt of doing that. At least ours. That's not the case for all of them.
Oh, they nip.
Oh, they nip. They nip when they play, though. And actually, you know what? It's the perfect time, Matthew, for me to whip out some more corgi pictures that I took on my phone and show you. Because if you're not sold on me telling you the yes, just alone, then the corgi pictures will sell you. And so let me throw up the Shiba pictures from the Shiba file. And so there we go. Hey, little baby. Little baby. Look at that little baby. She's so precious.
Yes, Shiva.
I love that dog. And then here's the second picture when she was going for Matthew's hand because they were playing with each other. But they're so sweet. I love my corgis. And I think they're excellent. I think that it's a dog for everyone. But I don't think everyone should buy one, though, because if everyone starts trying to buy one, they start overbreeding them, and then they get all kinds of genetic issues, kind of like German Shepherds. But still, I thank you so much once again for the support, and I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And I absolutely love my corgis, and I think corgis are great dogs. And so with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running and asking a pretty good question.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $12 super chat from Margaret Hemsley, who says, "I'm sending whilst I am able. Heading back across the Null Arbor on our 2,000-kilometer road trip back home." Ooh, goodness. Live chat question, please, and reread that again, Matt, please. And sorry, I just had to.
Reread the line, but still, thank you so much for the support. Hope you're having fun on that road trip. By the way, that sounds like a massively long road trip, and I hope that you're in like a good car with a comfortable seat and some good suspension, because that means a lot on long road trips like those. And so with that, let's get a live chat.
All right, and the live chat goes to, let's see here. Goes to let's see, let me look. A Silver Earth, who says, "Can you explain reactive armor to me? What does it do? And I apologize if this is a dumb question, but I don't know what it's supposed to do."
That is not a dumb question. That's actually a really good question to get into, because a lot of people don't know what's the difference in between explosive reactive armor and composite armor. So let me type in ERA armor. And so explosive reactive armor works, and I was about to say, is that like molten hot? No, they just highlighted that in like Adobe Photoshop. So this is what explosive reactive armor is. It's these little tiles that you see all over the tank. They look like terracotta bricks, and they kind of are terracotta bricks, but instead of it being clay, it's filled with explosives. These explosives are directed outwards and away from the armor of the tank. And so if a shell hits it, you know, like imagine you take a gun and you fire a bullet at one of these things, and it hits it. What happens is that hit causes the explosives within that little block to explode, and all the force goes outwards and away from the tank and towards that projectile. And in theory, what it does is that that explosive force being shot at the projectile slows it down. So that way when it hits the armor, it doesn't have as much penetrative ability because it just doesn't have the velocity anymore to be able to punch through. And that's the theory behind explosive reactive armor. It works the best against high explosive anti-tank fin stabilized shells, which are like... they kind of just explode on impact and then punch their force through because it generally neutralizes those the best. It does not work as much against an armor-piercing fin stabilized discarding sabot, which we also call the titanium dart, because the dart, well, actually it's not titanium, it's usually tungsten or a very heavy metal. It's such a high concentrated amount of kinetic force on such a small area. The explosion of the ERA tile doesn't really do much to stop it. So it's more so to stop like RPGs, Heat FS shells, but that's how they work in a way, is that it uses an explosion to stop an explosion. That's kind of how it works in essence, in the most basic way I can explain it, and hopefully it makes good sense. Did it make good sense, Matthew?
I think it did. I think it did personally.
All right. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support, and I hope that does answer that question fairly well. That was a great question. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Chase Matty, who puts in a $5 donation and says, "Isn't it ironic that Kadyrov is an animal lover? Despite so many human rights abuses, that guy better stay out of HIMAR range and Slava Ukraine."
Well, it's always ironic like that, you know, because Hitler was also a huge animal lover. If y'all didn't know, he was actually one of the first leaders in Germany in their history to start wildlife conservation projects. Really, some of the first in the world, really, outside the United States National Park Service, which is really weird as well, that sometimes the most psychotic and evil people to humanity love animals to an unbelievable degree. But with that, thank you for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well with a little bit of historical context. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and that was all of our super chat questions. So we are moving on to our live chat questions. And up first, we had the Morse code decoders of the stream: JP's Gone Fishing, Rumpelstiltskin, Cfay, Mark Hodges, Cliff Simonson, Dark Warrior 137, Paul Scholes, and Earl Bernew. They said, "It says the Russians will lose everything in this war, and Ukraine will regain everything."
That's the sound of money, and y'all got that correct. The Russians will lose everything over the course of this war, and the Ukrainians will hopefully regain everything they've lost. And so with that, I thank y'all for deciphering that Morse code message for the 416th day in a row, and thank you so much once again for always making sure to get that Morse code message. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one goes to Speaker Doctor, who says, "Did you hear about the GRU looking for the PMC LSA?"
I did not. If that is true, that's wild. And so with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Karen Vaughn, who says, "Enforcer, every podcaster I hear says Ukraine is lying and the Russian deaths are extremely overstated, and what say you?"
I'd say I don't really care what everyone says. There's a lot of everyone at the beginning of the war said the Ukrainians would be destroyed in 72 hours. We actually Jay Bagwell actually found the article where General Milley directly said that in quote, and they were all wrong. I don't really care what everyone else says. That would make no sense, no logical sense when you look at those classified documents, because they get the tank losses incredibly wrong on the classified documents. And it can easily be disproven with picture evidence, showing that there are far more tanks destroyed than the ones that were stated on the documents. So the losses also have to be far higher than what those documents said as well, in my opinion. And so with that, I hope I addressed that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Cindy Heaton, who says, "Have the Russians blocked the entrance to Bakhmut, and does anyone know what the truth is?"
They have not blocked the entrance to Bakhmut because we're still getting video footage of Ukrainian forces entering and leaving on the T-0504 highway, which shows that it is still open and there are reinforcements and supplies making their way into the city as we speak. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Solar Eclipse, who says Moldova wants to be part of NATO, and what are your thoughts?
I think they should become a part of NATO. It would, of course, having Moldova not be a NATO member would be kind of odd, considering that there is a little Russian enclave in there. It would be best to have Moldova a part of NATO, make sure that's quashed, so that way there's no way the Russians could try and ferry troops into Moldova to try and pull a fast one, although it still wouldn't work in the future if Ukraine was a NATO member. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the second to last question of the night.
This one goes to Bradley, who says, is there a possibility that NATO and Russia will face off in the Black Sea?
Russia and NATO face off in the Black Sea. A little unlikely, considering that NATO forces are usually keeping in the Mediterranean right now, mostly the Eastern Mediterranean, and they're also not allowed to pass through the Bosphorus or the Dardanelles. It would be pretty tough to have a naval standoff there, since NATO naval forces can't really make it in there. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who asked the lucky last question of the night?
All right, and that viewer is Miss Disa, who says, what do you think the White Room is that Zelensky speaks from, and why not use his office?
I think it's some kind of a bunker, because it sounds like there's no real carpeting or anything in there. It just sounds like concrete walls from the reverberations. So I think he's sitting inside of a bunker whenever he makes those addresses. But once again, I don't really know for certain. But that would be my best guess. And that's why he's not using the office, is because maybe they've assessed that there's some kind of threat to his life, and so they're keeping him in the bunker until that threat is dealt with or it dissipates. So with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well. And it is the end of tonight's stream. I thank you all so much once again for watching. And of course, I'll see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And of course, to run the Sunday night fundraiser. I of course thank everyone once again for watching tonight. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe, make sure to like, and make sure to comment, as it helps the Leaf Spring Army to grow, and it helps us to make sure that the word of the news of the war in Ukraine is still making it out there to as many people as possible. And so with that, good night, good luck, stay safe, take care, and I'll see you all tomorrow for the Sunday night fundraiser. And of course, Slava Ukraini!
And good night, Slav Ukraine, and be sure to join us tomorrow for the fundraiser. And Herom Slava. Slava Ukraine.
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці, запануємо ми, браття, у своїй сторонці, душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького